for you. We've just been talking about, of course, Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff. We've now had another resignation from Number 10. Keir Starmer's Director of Communications, Tim Allen, has now also resigned. The plot is thickening, the noose is tightening.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. It is Petrie here with you for 3 hours, so up until 1 o'clock, and of course at midnight, as ever, it is your chance to talk back. It is a full hour of a phone-in, and what I want to talk to you about at midnight is the royal family, the monarchy, because I don't think it's ever been in a more perilous position. So I'm just wondering if you think that this whole Epstein thing, this whole Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is actually going to do them an enormous amount of damage. We're going to be talking to Rupert Bell about that in just a moment. But for midnight, what I want to know from you is, what do they need to do in order to survive? How do they stay as a relevant monarchy? And it might be that you think, well, look, the only thing that will do that is if Charles steps aside and William and fresh new take, that might just save the monarchy's reputation, because at the moment they're being asked questions about who knew what and when. And if it turns out that Andrew's brother, Charles, the King, knew anything about his relationship with Epstein going back in time, that could be disastrous. So the spotlight is on the royal family. Do you even think the monarchy should be saved? The numbers are declining, the numbers of people who think that a monarchy is still relevant, especially, you would imagine, amongst young people. So that's what I want to talk to you about at midnight, and I'd love to know what you think. Has Andrew damaged the monarchy beyond repair, or do you think there is something that they can do to save themselves? Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you back, and you can text the word talk and your message to 87222. Let me tell you what else is coming up on the programme. We have Amy Fisher, former Director of Communications for the Conservative Party. She's going to be here, and she's very well placed, isn't she, to talk about all those resignations, especially in comms. So we'll be chatting to her about that, the Labour resignations in comms. And Morse is going to join us to talk about social media addiction. There's a huge court case going on in the US at the moment, looking at whether people like Meta deliberately make their apps addictive. This is the claim that's being made, and it could, if they are found guilty, it could open the doors to an awful lot of claims. So we're going to be talking to Ant about that. We're also going to be talking about the Corruption Perception Index. Why does that matter? Well, it matters because the UK has fallen to its lowest point on the global corruption scale since the index underwent a major revamp in 2012. So we're going to be talking to the Chief Executive of the Transparency Index, Transparency International UK. He's going to talk us through why the US and the UK are falling down, because we've just got so much corruption, and the Epstein files will not have helped us for next year, I would imagine. So getting back to the Epstein files and the royals. In the US, of course, there's quite a fuss going on, although not as much of a fuss as it is in other countries. I mean, at least we've done something right with Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. He's been stripped of titles. He's been moved out of one huge mansion into a slightly smaller huge mansion. But, you know, nonetheless, you know, things are happening. Epstein files and Peter Mandelson, they're being looked at. It seems in America all they do is talk. But one guy in America, Ro Khanna, he's a congressman, and he had quite a bit to say about the future of our monarchy. Have a listen to this.
Question, if I may. What did you say to the man formerly known as Prince Andrew and to Peter Mandelson with regard to giving evidence to your committee?
Well, Mandelson may bring down the whole government, from what I hear. You know, he just engaged in terrible behavior. I mean, the allegations are very serious that he was working for Gordon Brown and then feeding information about UK possibly buying euros and having Epstein trade on that. I mean, it is a deeply, deeply troubling. And you know, Epstein's, I saw this interview with Epstein's former girlfriend talking about how someone is a loser if they weren't mentioned in the Epstein files. It's a window into the elite impunity, this club. And by the way, I think this is the most vulnerable the British monarchy has ever been. I mean, I heard they were asking the Queen questions about the Epstein class. They ought to ask the King and Queen questions, and maybe this will be the end of the monarchy.
What quite do you think it could be the end of the monarchy?
Well, if they don't have answers, or if they're implicated with an Epstein class, not a good look for the British monarchy.
What questions does the King have to answer?
Well, the King has to answer what he knew about Andrew. And just stripping Andrew of a title is not enough. I mean, Andrew needs to come before our committee and start answering questions.
Like I said, at least we've done something, right? I mean, the Epstein files in America, the only person who's serving any prison time is a woman. So let's discuss this now and see if Rupert Bell, Talk's royal correspondent, thinks that Ro Khanna has got a point or not. Rupert, thank you so much for joining me.
No problem at all. Does he have a point? I think it is a constitutional crisis that what has happened, and it's also a political crisis. Let's be quite clear. The royal family have been dragged into this screaming and kicking because of Andrew's arrogance and stupidity, and how they've dealt with it is going to, of course, provoke questions. And for Peter Mandelson, you know, obviously Keir Starmer's brazening it out and everything. He's dealing with his political fallout from it. But the royal family forever has always had crisis. And you think back to the 17th century, of course, we had 11 years where we had Oliver Cromwell in charge. So the royal family has had to deal with controversies throughout its tenure. And what I will always say is, yes, right, we have a monarchy. You can't just change a constitutional system. You've got to then come up with something that will be better than what we've got. And that will always be the question. But for the king, this is obviously deeply frustrating, deeply upsetting that his brother, by his actions, and they seem to just, every time we get something, I think they get blindsided because they think, right, that's it. But all these emails that come out compound the problem. And that's why the king had to say, look, if there is a case for Andrew to answer for, then he needs to be investigated. But it is, I have to say, still not easy for the royal family. Every time they try and sort of get on the front foot, then there is negative publicity. At the moment, of course, we've got Prince William in Saudi Arabia. He's representing this government on a mission to promote British affairs. That's not without its complications and the sort of MBS factor as well. So it's not an easy time for the royal family. Should they go? Well, you're right. The young probably are pretty ambivalent to them, but actually we need to come up with a proper solution. If you're going to get rid of them, where do we head as a constitution? Because it's not just about getting rid of the royal family. It then changed the entire fabric of the way we work as our politics work in this country.
Do you think that the House of Windsor have managed this crisis well enough? I mean, I know we're not used to the royals talking. The Queen never, you know, would never talk about anything. It was, you know, never explain anything. But these are different times and there are different expectations. Has the King done enough to distance himself, to punish Andrew for the shame that he has brought upon them?
Well, I think the testament, the way they said, when we saw those pictures last Monday week of him sort of smiling around Windsor Great Park, I think that was, it almost felt like that was the moment they said, right, we've got to get you out of here, because we don't need to see you grinning as if you haven't got a care in the world, when over that weekend we're seeing you, with pictures of you with a woman lying on the floor, and it just looks really seedy. And so the royal family have said, we don't need to see that, as if you're brazening it out, which his arrogance has led to this situation. And that is the problem for the king. He's got his filial responsibilities, it's his younger brother, and whether he's managed to say, right, he stripped him of his, the HRH was stripped, then he lost his title as the Prince and Duke of York and all that. But is it enough? Well, he's been secreted away now to Norfolk, and hopefully, from their perspective, there won't be these pictures of him going around Windsor Great Park. It's a very uncomfortable time for the royal family. They're thin on resources. They need to be seen to be doing the kind of work that they're there to do. But at the moment, every time they go and do something, even if the king goes on a visit to Lancashire as he was yesterday, there is a heckler there. Now, okay, that was one, and everyone's entitled to protest, but it just sort of gives a sense there is unease about how the royal family have dealt with this. But ultimately, they should be able to come through it. But like all of us, we seem to just gasp with the latest allegations that seem to be coming from these Epstein files.
I mean, I do keep saying this, but the chances are we're at the foothills of the Epstein files and further revelations. I mean, just this week, or we're only Tuesday, we find out about when he was trade envoy, right? So there was the photographs of him over that young woman or girl. There's, all the other allegations. We have to say, of course, the prince has vehemently denied any wrongdoing. But then we see emails where it appears that he is sharing trade secrets with a known paedophile, and so this just gets more and more shameful and embarrassing, and this could end. I mean, it could be that he has questions to answer and is pulled in by the police. I mean, that could be a real shock to the monarchy.
It will be, and but unfortunately, Andrew's brought this shame upon his family by his actions and being associated with Jeffrey Epstein and all the fallout from that. It does at times feel as if Mandelson and Andrew are the sort of big star names within this, and actually in America there does seem to be, it never quite seems to be able to fall on any one individual, all these allegations. So they are the sort of celebrity, the posters of the Epstein scandal. But in the end, Andrew, by his, and Sarah Ferguson and their sort of need and sort of desperate clinging onto their relationship with Epstein, has led to this problem. And you just wonder, why didn't the royal family at the time, they knew that he was obviously, presumably, had some friendship with him. He was also going to have supposedly dinners in Buckingham Palace. Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell went to Sandringham back in the day as well. So it was well publicized. But actually, probably when the Queen was alive, she was always deeply loyal to Andrew, and maybe encouraged to come up with that $12 million payout, which again, as Andrew said, I protest my innocence. But even now, this week, Ghislaine Maxwell has come out with saying that photograph was real. That interview has just now looked like a complete fabrication. And so as a result, the royal family have been brought into this. And bearing in mind, the king is now 77, he's battling cancer. Has he got the energy to deal with this? And William has obviously had the problems, not only dealing with his father's cancer, his wife recovering from illness as well. So it's really been a debilitating drip feed of problems for the royal family to deal with. And have they been able to get on the front foot the energy that they need to show what the royal family is about. And that's the big problem for them going forward. And let's be honest, the Epstein affair is not going away. And for Andrew, it just seems to be getting deeper and deeper into it. And as a result, is dragging his family into the constitutional fallout from what has been going on with his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein.
If you were to advise King Charles, knowing that both of us would accept that this is probably just the beginning. I mean, it feels like it shouldn't be, but there's going to be more revelations coming out. There's going to be more emails, especially if we get the final tranche of 3 million coming through. That the potential damage is absolutely gargantuan, right? It is bigger than anything we could possibly really imagine. And although royal families have been through crises before, it is a different world. There's a different way of people connecting with each other and talking to each other. What would your advice be to King Charles? I mean, does he need to speak to us and even take that step and say, look, you know, we abhor everything that my brother got him involved in?
I think all he needs to do at this stage is, if there is a case to be answered for, then Andrew has to then be the man who is put forward to answer and defend these allegations against him. So if it means that the police or anyone have to investigate, if he has been, as they say, passing on information which he shouldn't have done as a trade envoy, that's a serious allegation. So it really basically means the king to just say, crack on, get on with this. It's uncomfortable, but we've got to get to the bottom of this and deal with it. It won't be easy because, you know, as you say, the monarchy want to keep things quiet and look like everything in the garden is rosy. Well, at the moment, it's pretty prickly for them. And so they need to find a way of dealing with it. So ultimately, as the more allegations come out, they need to be looked at, and then the king can get on with his job. He doesn't need necessarily to say anything, but it's for Andrew to account for his actions, and that's what the royal family should be encouraging in many ways. Now, we heard from that American congressman, I think it was, you actually say, well, no, he doesn't necessarily need to do anything. It's up to our authorities to do something if they feel that he's behaved in an improper way and may have broken the law by passing on sensitive information to Jeffrey Epstein or whoever. And that Andrew is the one who needs to account for his actions and take up the responsibility. And then maybe the royal family might find a way of moving on.
We're looking at images of Fergie and the girls. Of course, there is that revelation now that Fergie, a week after Epstein got out of jail for being a paedophile, a sex offender, that she took the girls to visit with him. Some people are also saying that that those three should be answering questions about what they knew of Epstein. I mean, it's an extraordinary. It goes deeper than just Andrew, right? It's Fergie as well, and the begging letters that she sent him, and the constantly asking for money from the man. We haven't seen sight nor sound of Fergie for a while. Where is she?
I have to say, no idea. But ultimately, when it comes to Fergie, you look at what she was doing. It's just grubby and seedy. Asking for rent of $27,000, asking for Epstein to pay for her first-class ticket while her daughters are traveling in economy, according to these files. You just think, sorry, you've got all the privilege, yet you just behaving like, a grifter, because they're desperate need for a grand lifestyle. And their actions are creating the problem. And it's the biggest. The Queen obviously referred to back in the early 90s annus horribilis. At the moment for the king, as he tries to regroup and sort of set a tone for his monarchy and his reign, that whole thing has been dominated by not only Andrew, but obviously the fallout with his son and Harry and all that. It's been a really stressful time in many ways for him.
Yeah.
But Fergie is almost those needy emails and the crass stupidity, you just think, what were you thinking?
Yeah.
Most right-thinking people say, why did you feel the need to go to Epstein just after he's released and then think, well, pay for me, pay for me. This just makes it look, most of us just can't comprehend what was going through her
I certainly
mind.
can't comprehend her taking 2 little girls to visit with the man. I mean, that just, I don't even want to go there. Some people, Rupert, are suggesting that with everything that's going on, that actually that a fresh start needs to happen, and that potentially if King Charles stepped aside, then the monarchy in a very limited form through William and Catherine could survive if this does get worse. Is that likely to happen?
Absolutely. I would say never say never, but I would be very surprised. Bearing in mind, we've only had one abdication. That was in, obviously, Edward the Eighth. But we don't do that. Remember, there was talk about the Queen needing to abdicate for the King to take over.
Yeah.
Back in the day. So this is fairly normal sort of things that happen. That's not going to happen. But what William has to do is to work out how he can make the monarchy seem relevant to that younger generation, the people who have got more important things probably to worry about is just working, keeping jobs, paying the mortgage. The royal family is a sort of complete sideshow, but it is ultimately the monarchy as an important part of the British fabric of society. People they just think it's people living in a bunch of palaces and living a life that no one understands. So it's a big challenge for William, how he can make the royal family seem relevant when he takes over as king. I don't see any likelihood of an abdication. That would, again, be a constitutional issue. And in terms of what Keir Starmer's got to worry about, he's got many more important things to be worrying about the state of the monarchy. It's for the royal family to deal with the black sheep of the family and Andrew and get a grip of it. And if Andrew has broken the law, then he should suffer the consequences. And that just might give the chance to say, in the eyes of the British public, right, no one can get away with anything if they've transgressed. And I think that would be a step forward. But we don't know how this is going to turn out, because every day I wake up and go, what now?
Yeah.
And I think most of us are in that situation. It's not just about the royal family. All these allegations that are coming out around all sorts of people. Look, it's even going to the President of the United States, and he's got political issues dealing with how these files are released and all the redactions that are going on. So it's not easy. But for the king, this is a permanent headache, and it's his younger brother who has caused the biggest problem for him. And while he knew, probably the king, that he was only going to be a short-term monarch compared to his mother, he's actually not having much fun as the king because of all the things with it that his family have created for him to deal with.
I mean, we all probably think we've got a black sheep in our family, right? But I mean, you've got to figure, haven't you? Someone like that. It's just like the poisonous gift that keeps on giving. Rupert, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Go and get a glass of wine now. It's good to speak to you. Have you got one? Good man.
Thank you very much.
Good man. I'm pleased. I felt guilty that you weren't drinking. Rupert Bell, Talk's royal correspondent. Thank you so much for joining me. Quick break. Back in a sec.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good evening. This is Talk, and it's Petrie with you until 1 o'clock. And coming up at midnight, as ever, it is your chance to talk back. And I want to hear what you make of the crisis that the monarchy is going through, with enormous thanks and a little red bow tied round it from Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. The news just keeps getting worse and worse. The images keep getting worse and worse. Everything is just on a downward spiral. Now, the King has done what he can to distance himself from his brother. He has stripped him of all his titles, and he's moved him out of his very obvious and visible home to one eventually in Norfolk. So, but is that enough? Is that enough for Andrew Mountbatten Windsor? I mean, the Americans don't seem to think so, but I think it's very rich of them talking about how disgraceful these Brits have behaved when there's enough Americans that have behaved badly who've had their names redacted for no apparent reason. So there are a lot of questions to be answered, but I want to know from you whether you think the monarchy can survive this, will survive this, or what they have to do to save themselves from this crisis. It is only going to get worse. Andrew is going to pour more shame and more embarrassment upon the House of Windsor, not to mention Fergie and all of the stuff that she's been doing as well. There will be more and more coming out about her as well. Really, as Rupert Bell put it, just grubby behaviour. Getting a convicted paedophile that you know is convicted, he's just come out of jail. Really cushy jail, but nonetheless. And you're begging him to pay your first-class ticket to fly yourself and your two little girls to go and visit with him. I mean, it doesn't get much more grubby than that, does it? So do you think the royal family can survive, will survive, and what do they need to do in order to do so? Or do you think that absolutely they shouldn't? Maybe it's time that we all moved on. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie, and just a reminder that coming up we're going to be talking about this huge landmark trial underway in California accusing these apps of being addictive, deliberately addictive. So that's a really interesting one for the likes of Meta too, and TikTok has already answered, has already paid up on that one. But what I wanted to address right now is corruption. We talk about it a lot on this programme. We talk about the corruption of parliamentarians. We talk about the corruption of businessmen. We talk about Donald Trump and the corruption going on overt corruption going on in the United States of America. But did you know that there is such a thing as a corruption index? And we are slipping down the scale because in a lot of democracies right now, there's a lot of corruption. So the UK has fallen to its lowest point on the Global Corruption Perceptions Index since the index underwent a major revamp in 2012. According to Transparency International, who authored this index, domestic scandals, political donors receiving preferential treatments, and MPs acting as lobbyists have contributed to this worrying result. Peter Mandelson will feature, I imagine, in next year's result. The UK remains 20th in the global ranking for the third consecutive year, a significant decline from its top 10 position back in 2017. Well, joining me now, I'm thrilled to say, is Daniel Bruce, Chief Executive of Transparency International UK. Good evening to you, Daniel. Thank you for joining me.
Hello, good evening.
Can you, so I've just outlined a couple of things there. What do you look for when you're looking at potential or real corruption in a country?
Yes, so the Corruption Perceptions Index ranks 180 countries around the world where a score of 100 is completely clean and a score of 0 would theoretically be completely corrupt. And what the CPI is a poll of polls. It is a mixture of primary sources that are expert surveys of global business leaders, academics, and other data feeding into sources such as the Economist Intelligence Unit, the World Bank, the World Economic Forum. And we put all of these together, blend these surveys together to see what those international views of each country's corruption landscape is in its public sector to ultimately give us these rankings. And as you set out, the UK has really been on a concerning trajectory for a number of years now. We saw a very big drop 3 years ago today, and then today we've dropped another point compared to 12 months ago, down to 70 out of 100, which is our lowest score on record.
And what is attributing to that? Because I presume, does corruption change? Does it morph? Does it become is every year a different set of boundaries? Because, if you suddenly outlawed, I don't know, single massive payments to a political party, then that would add to corruption, right?
Yeah, one of the advantages of this index and the way that it blends all of these different sources together is that you can get under the bonnet of what sort of global perceptions are saying about corruption risk in a country's public sector in quite a specific way. And certainly what we see in today's score is growing concern about political corruption risk in the UK, and that spans the period just before our general election in 2024, and it spans the first few months or year or so of the Labour government, where we've seen, political concern about the influence of political donors with both of the two largest parties in that period, and then going back a little bit further, concerns about the way that COVID contracts were handed out during the pandemic, general sense of cronyism and patronage in the House of Lords, and all of this points to, I think, for mature democracies like the UK, the need for really ambitious systemic reforms that get us beyond this sort of reactionary approach to some of the scandals that we spent a lot of the last few days talking about.
I mean, would Lord Ali, for example, and the donation of lots of clothes to the Prime Minister, would that be seen as potential corruption since he was given preferential treatment?
I think that the corruption risk that you see in that case is that Lord Ali is or was one of the biggest donors to the Labour Party, the now party of government, and early in their tenure in government, he was given a pass to 10 Downing Street. So what does that do in terms of general public perceptions? It creates the impression, if not the reality, that because somebody is putting big bucks into their party of choice, they are getting preferential access to the seat of power. And that is really the antithesis to what we should be seeing in our representative democracy, where we should have a level playing field, where it's one person, one vote, and where, you know, political finance and the big money that runs the risk of corrupting our political system isn't having this outsized influence. And
I mean, your pen must have been twitching over the Epstein revelations, because we've not only got Lord Mandelson, who apparently was passing secrets, but now potentially Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, when he was trade envoy, doing a similar thing. Do they count? Will they count next year? Will we be going even further down the list?
Well, let's see. I mean, recent events won't have fed into this year's index because it takes a few months to put the final data together. So they kind of cut off of the data is the sort of summer each year. But absolutely, you know, very high-profile allegations such as these are capturing global attention, and therefore they drive perceptions of what corruption risk looks like in the UK and of course around the world. And you know, it goes without saying that the allegations against Peter Mandelson and the emerging concerns around similar alleged conduct on the part of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor have proven very serious indeed, and would amount to an abuse of entrusted power by some of the most powerful individuals in our country at the time. We shall obviously have to see where that goes and allow due process to play out. But the big concern with cases like this is every time allegations or investigations like this dominate the headlines, they don't just happen in a bubble and then go away again. And the likes of you and I will stop talking about it and move on to something else, I'm sure, in the months ahead. But each time we see things like this, it gradually erodes that public trust. And that's what really concerns us. And that's why we're really calling on government today to go much further in its reforms to political finance, to corruption risk in Parliament, to drive better standards in government. Because really all we've seen from successive governments now is just tinkering in the margins.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's always a big concern of mine, Daniel, about the erosion of democracy. If we don't believe in the systems anymore, we don't tend to vote for them, and then the whole thing falls apart. We've just seen Labour sweep in with a massive majority on 33% of the vote, for example. So it is concerning. But with a perception index, is perception equal to actual? You know, I can perceive some things differently to how you might perceive things. So if there's a perception index that, you know, the UK is perceived to be going downhill in terms of corruption, is it actually?
Well, perceptions are driven by events, aren't they? You know, and if we cast our minds back to those terrible years of the COVID-19 pandemic and the concerns that featured very heavily in the index when we had that big drop in 2023, we know in that case through our own research and investigations here at Transparency International UK that a third of £45 billion of COVID contracts that were handed out by the last government carried 3 or more corruption red flags, and that's hard data that aligns with perceptions and the concerns of other global business leaders and academics. And of course, you've mentioned these recent allegations and concerns. Those are real cases, real investigations, and of course they get noticed. So, you know, corruption in its absolute sense is a very difficult thing to measure because corruption has many faces. It's not just about payment of bribes to public officials. It's about wider issues around illicit financial flows in and out of the City of London, which this index doesn't capture. And it's about that thing that occurs in the shadows, political corruption, until it sort of bursts out into the headlines in the way that we've seen it. So measuring perceptions is one of the most authoritative ways that's been established to do this. But again, perceptions are driven by events. And something I always encourage people to do when they look at this index is say, well, you know, the UK is 70 out of 100, still a pretty good score, 20th in the world out of 180 countries. But it's that decline which is being replicated in other mature democracies that we should be really concerned about.
And what about the individuals like Elon Musk, right, for example? Is it corruption, or is it seen as corruption for him to interfere with politics across Europe and in the UK, with huge donation of 70-odd million to Reform, I think it was? Is that a corruption? Is that corrupting? And if it is that a British corruption or an American or South African corruption?
Well, that's a really interesting case that you pick up on, which was just over a year ago now, wasn't it? That Elon Musk was suggesting that he would give $100 billion, about £70 million, to the Reform UK party. In the end, he didn't. But let's just strip it back a little bit. Our electoral law, as it stands, does not allow foreign donations into UK political parties because
they were a business, aren't they, Reform?
Reform UK are a limited company, but it's about where the money is coming from. Now, UK companies can donate to UK political parties, and so what was being suggested at the time was that this £70 million would be channeled through one of Elon Musk's UK subsidiaries. And we, for a long time, have been calling for tighter regulation on corporate donations to make sure that UK companies can only make donations on the basis of the profits that they have made in this country, so that they cannot be used as a vehicle for foreign donations that would otherwise be against the law. And that law, as it stands, is there to protect the UK's democracy from foreign interference, which could come from anywhere in the world, and it could come from foreign interests with malign intent towards the UK, of course. And it's designed to make sure that political party financing in the UK is provided by the electorate of the UK who make their own choices at the ballot box. But it's a very good example of what, had it come to pass, it would have been 5 times the largest political donation on record, and it would have had a hugely distorting effect on the bank balance of the political parties, including, you know, the recipient party in particular. And this is the big point about big money in politics. There needs to be a level playing field. And one of the things we've been calling for the UK government to do for a long time now is to put a cap on donations and on spending in general elections to make it fairer and to protect our representative democracy.
I'll be fascinated to see what your perceptions index says next year, particularly with regards to the US. I think that's going to be very, very interesting. Fascinating chat. Thank you, Daniel. I really enjoyed that. Daniel Bruce, Chief Executive of Transparency International UK. So if you didn't know it, we're getting more corrupt. Nice, isn't it? Quick break, back in a sec.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. This is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And coming up at midnight, it's the fabulous Amy Fisher, former comms director for the Tory party. She will be here in the studio to go through the papers. Before that, though, I don't know if you've seen this, but I thought this was really, really fascinating. A landmark trial is underway in California, where the world's largest social media companies have been accused of creating addiction machines. The proceedings mark the beginning of a 6-week trial with significant implications that could open up a wave of similar lawsuits for the owners of Instagram and YouTube. But have these networks been designed specifically to be addictive? Of course, it's in their interest to make them addictive, because the more time you spend on these social media sites, the more they can advertise at you and the more they can say. I mean, we have the same thing here with Ofcom. We have the number of listeners that listen to a not Ofcom, with Radar. We have the number of listeners to each programme and how long they stay. Right, because we're a commercial enterprise. It's important that you stay long enough because of the commercial aspect of the programme. So it is in, I mean, we always, the presenters here are the bits between the adverts. We keep you here so that those adverts play, right? I mean, that's just the commercial model. That's the same as ITV, it's the same as all of those commercial models. So these social media sites are the same. It is in their interest to keep you engaged. Is that the same, though, as getting you addicted? I mean, I don't know about you, but I have certainly thought, I'll just 5 minutes, I'll have a look at TikTok. It's my favourite sort of brain, I don't know, piece of chocolate cake, if you like. 2 hours later, I'm like, what happened? Right? So, I wonder if you think they're addictive too. Ant Morse joins me now, author, futurist and AI advisor. And it's really good to see you again. Thank you so much for joining me. Look,
likewise, great to see you.
We've all done, well, I presume we have, otherwise I've just confessed to something abhorrent. But that 5 minutes and then you're gone. Is that addiction or is that something else?
Well, it's interesting, Petrie, and I think addiction's a big word.
Yeah.
It's doing a lot of the heavy lifting. As you said, these platforms are designed to keep our attention. They've moved from, connection platforms, which they probably started life out many years ago, into the commercial models, and like any commercial model, growth is key, and, they're in vast competition. If you think TV was one to many, early social media was one to a mass, a people of like mind. And now we're in this position where the algorithms are so good, it's one to you. So they're actually pumping this stuff directly to you, and it's super relevant. Now, I think the problem there is that the platforms would argue it's super relevant. It's like watching a great TV show or starting a great box set. You end up binge watching it, and a bit like you do, you get kind of caught in this, you want to see what's coming next.
Yeah.
And we're naturally voyeuristic. So if you think of the content which is being provided, this might be, someone renovating a house, or someone, sharing the dramas of a love life, or challenges of a job, or redundancy, or a promotion. So we get kind of captured into this pattern of, what next, what next? So the social media platforms would argue that. However, they are very, very fine-tuned models. So you could argue that they know what this is doing wider. So if they're aware of what impact it's having on the positive and it grows their model, great. But if it then has a negative impact, you could argue they also know that as well. And this is what's going to be brought through in these cases where they start to surface some of this awareness of the damage it was doing. I don't think it's new, but
I mean, I agree that the word addiction it's like a word, isn't it? It is a very serious word, but there is no doubt about the process of. I mean, mine is mainly, I have to be honest with you, dog videos. and stuff like that. And there is a house being renovated that I really like as well. But apart from that, but that feeds an endorphin, right? That they know that must have an impact on our brains. And if I suppose it depends where you say addiction is. It is addiction in the brain, and if so, like an alcoholic addiction, is that an alcohol addiction? Is that formed in your brain? Is drugs formed in your brain? So if it is to keep you engaged in that way and feeding your brain in that way, then I can understand why that link has been made to the word addiction.
Yeah, and that's the point, isn't it? If you think back to, I'll speak to my generation, you know, we watched TV and eventually something would come on that wasn't that interesting and you went outside and did something else.
Yeah.
I think now we've got to a point where it is always relevant. It's always super interesting, like your TikTok and my TikTok. They'll be massively different, but I'm watching someone renovate a house and there's lots of dogs and cats and all that stuff that goes with it and funny clips. So it's very relevant information and it's entertaining to me, so I watch it. If something great was on TV, you'd watch it. But again, there was the natural pauses because it was one-to-many. Now it's one-to-one. We're entering a new territory that we've not had before. You know, there's never been anything that's been this successful. So we've created the monster. Now we have to try and police it and say, well, you know, so who does own the responsibility? Because ultimately they've hit the jackpot. You know, this is super relevant. You know, it's aimed at young people usually, but it's got me and you, right? You know, I'm the same. You lose 2 hours, you think, what happened?
What happened? And that is the thing. I've now had to ban my own phone from my own bedroom, and I have to tell myself to do that so that I don't sit on that, because that 5 minutes turns into 2, especially after doing a show like this, right? It's highly concentrated. I'm, you know, working with lots of different things, so I want my brain to sort of calm down. But I don't think it does that. I think it does something else to my brain, and it feeds that. Like I said, it's like a slice of chocolate cake for your brain. You feel better, but in a way that is bad for you.
Yeah, agreed. And I think this is why this case is important. You know, I don't think we can say it's, you know, just one of those things and it's somebody chasing, you know, a legal claim. Right. I think it's important because this is new territory. We've not been here before. There isn't anything, as mentioned, that's been this successful. So I think it's going to bring awareness to the situation and then allow us to build governance around it. This happens a lot with technology. It goes far faster and develop far quicker because of competition and natural innovation than we can keep up as parents, as organisations, as regulators. You know, we are always second to the show to then say, right, now how do we keep control of this? And that's I think where we are definitely with social media in its current form. And
like we were saying, look, as adults, we can, you know, that's our responsibility. That's down to us. If we lose 2 hours, it's like, okay, you know, that's just stupid. But if it's children, and of course, what any company wants to do, it's not just social media platforms, is to grab a customer young and keep them, right? That's the point. You don't want to lose them when they grow up or whatever. And I suppose I'd be fascinated to see the science of what happens to a young person's brain that's still developing when they're sucked into this world that has been designed purely for them. I mean, even if it's escapism from a horrible family situation or a bullying situation at school, I'd be fascinated to see what impact that has on a growing brain, because I guess there won't be that much information yet.
No, absolutely. And this is, you know, a concerning point that, you know, we are in theory using social media, and it's not, you know, it was very evident in the US presidential campaigns in the past where, you know, platforms got behind a particular candidate and said, you know, we'll help you. So lots of the content was very much that way. Certain things that I follow as a futurist and as a researcher always come from the same companies, and you think, well, you've a vested interest in promoting this information to me. So we've got to be very careful with children. Again, this is why I think it's an important case, and many cases of this type of nature I can quickly kind of dismiss to think, you know, it's just somebody trying to make a claim. But this one I think is important. It's one we shouldn't ignore. It's one we should watch very closely and say, well, what is the outcome? What do the platforms need to do? What's their responsibility? Because again, my view here is that, you know, as a parent, we can, you know, try and instill screen time and say, get off your devices, go outside. But we're no match for thousands of engineers in big technology companies. So the platforms have to be accountable. They know what they're doing. They know the damage and the implications of it.
Yeah.
As parents, we need to get behind it. And as a regulator level, we need to think differently. Maybe we ban certain platforms.
Well, I think that is being looked at now, isn't it? Fines are tricky because they just pass them on to us. Ant, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Ant Morse there, author, futurist and AI advisor. Stay where you are. Amy Fisher is next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there and a good evening. It is Petrie, and coming up at midnight, of course, in an hour's time, we're going to be opening up the phone lines for Talkback. So it's your opportunity to do just that. And I want to talk to you about the monarchy because there have been suggestions from the United States of America and other areas that this could be the end of the monarchy. And what do I mean by this? I mean Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, and the continuing flow of revelations, photographs of him probably not acting his best, to put it mildly. Also, Ghislaine Maxwell coming out and saying, no, that I was there for that photograph. That, you know, the famous photograph that he said he was at Pizza Hut and couldn't possibly have been there. She said, no, it's a real photograph. I know also there have been forensic people looking at it and have declared it to be a real photograph. So it makes a bit of a liar of him. That's the photograph there if you're watching. And so Andrew Mountbatten pouring shame and disgrace upon the House of Windsor. Has the King, in your view, done enough to distance themselves from his brother, basically, William's uncle? God, it's embarrassing, isn't it? But has the King done enough, do you think? Have the King and Queen done enough, do you think? Do you think they should be making Andrew Mountbatten Windsor go to America to answer questions in Congress? Do you think this could be the end of the monarchy? Do you think that this could bring down the House of Windsor? How do you think they save it? How can they save it? I mean, I was speaking to Rupert Bell, our royal correspondent, at the top of the show, and just asking, is it possible that that amount of shame can be stepped away from? Does the king need to do something drastic, perhaps, and abdicate, and then just say, look, there's all of us old lot, we're stepping out of this now, and leaving it to William and Kate? Is that something that you would accept? I'd just be really interested to know what you think. I mean, the popularity of the royals is going downward from its height of about 90% of Brits that loved the royal family. It's now getting lower and lower and lower, and that's largely because of younger generations coming through who are just not that engaged, just not that bothered, and don't see the point of them. Maybe you think it's time that we didn't have a royal family. Maybe we need an elected head of state. God help us, who would that be? Tony Blair would be right there, wouldn't he? Going, me, me, me. Anyway, what do you think is the future of the monarchy here in Britain? And can they really distance themselves from the stink that is Andrew Mountbatten Windsor? 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at national rate, but we do call you back. And please send me a message if you'd like to. Put the word talk and then your message to 87222. Well, here with me in the studio is Amy Fisher, former comms director at the Tory party. I thought you were going to quit. Isn't that what comms directors are doing nowadays?
Well, you know, people sort of do occasionally. Don't you? The comms director kind of flounces off with a couple of other backroom people, and that's meant to solve everybody's woes. I mean, you know, I wish comms, whilst being a very important part of any political party in government, were the be-all and end-all, but I don't think the quitting of Tim Allen, Keir Starmer's, or indeed prior to him on Sunday, Morgan McSweeney, sort of made life any much easier. No. Although I did love a line today. So obviously Chris Wormold, the cabinet secretary, you know, most senior civil servant, is also very much embroiled in all of this, and you know, his future's very uncertain. But he was meant to go and appear before the Intelligence and Security Committee today, who obviously are this independent parliamentary committee that have been given the responsibility for looking at all of these other communications with, you know, sort of Mandelson and what can be released possibly sooner rather than later, because there is obviously ongoing Met Police interest. And the sort of notes and minutes that were put out from the meeting of the ISC just said, unfortunately, the last minute, the Cabinet Secretary was unable to join us. And sort of, if you're looking at the sort of Whitehall criminology of it all, it's like there's an incredible amount one could read into what appeared to be a slightly bland statement. But if you've been following us, as so many people have, the sort of machinations and
has he quit? Has he been fired?
Craziness of the last few days, that did bring me a wry smile. And no, I don't expect that he will last.
No.
Very much longer at all.
No. The thing is, though, with comms director, I mean, presumably you didn't have to resign over or fluff
there was nothing.
Puff off.
Do you know, I was literally about to say there's nothing I particularly had to resign over, which makes it sound like there was just a small succession of things. No, I whilst there were some very difficult things I had to deal with, I personally myself was never in a sort of resigning, falling on your sword type scenario. I mean, the case where I did leave a position not through my own volition was when I had been a special advisor for Amber Rudd in the Home Office.
Were you fired?
Well, Amber resigned because of the Windrush sort of scandal, and whether it was very much, you know, one that Amber had inherited, but it was all to do with the vagaries of the immigration and border situation, and whether people who'd come over in the Windrush cohort had been incorrectly deported, which had turned out that they had been, and Amber happened to be the Home Secretary at the time, left holding the kind of hospital pass of a sort of basket case for system where people had been wrongly treated and wrongly sent home. So Amber decided that it was the right thing for her to do, to resign, and I believe that was the position that she was in also. So as a special advisor, you are only there for your principal. So once they leave the department, you have a Ragnar ignominious departure too.
With your cardboard box and putting the pot plant in there.
No, it was quite literally. But Amber actually resigned on a Sunday night, and sort of she'd made the decision to kind of relatively late in the day. So then myself and the other two special advisors to not want the kind of horror show and this is actually from a purely comms perspective, to just sort of spill over into the sort of Monday when there was another Home Affairs Select Committee appearance scheduled, because it was Vet Cooper was head of it at the time, and that was rightly the parliamentary committee scrutinising what had gone on with the Windrush cohorts. Like I say, Amber decided to go. So then we sort of had a big scrabble to get Amber's resignation statement in a place where she was happy with it, and then get it to some broadcasters for sort of the 10 o'clock news. And you might remember it's quite difficult to raise news desks or specific broadcasters at 9:45 on a Sunday night. So then that became a very real, guys, Home Secretary's trying to resign. Could somebody just pick up their phone so that we can tell the British press that would be great. So that was a sort of actually logistical challenge of the night that Amber resigned. But then, as I say, because it happened over a weekend, the next morning you sort of go into what had been your office as a special advisor, and you're sort of clearing up your bits and pieces. And I expect you got a couple of spare pairs of shoes under the desk. You've got your top drawer with your emergency tights and your Tampax, and you're going to have to clear all of that out, basically in front of the new people who have literally
just nicked the office.
Who have literally like sat down in your seat, and it's all just rather. Oh, sorry, excuse me. Get that spare pair of tights.
A place I used to work at. In fact, Gabriella, the producer, used to work there as well. You would find out that you were fired by your pass not working.
Oh, the classic.
The classic. And then, of course, what you'd have to do if your pass didn't work is you'd have to go to the reception desk to speak to security to see, because it happens here all the time. And they then have to say, oh, you've been fired. And then Gary, who was the security guy behind, do you remember Gary? Who was behind the desk there, he would just look at you and bend down and pick up a cardboard box with all your stuff in it. It never happened to me, by the way, but that was how you knew you were fired.
Yeah.
Presenters as well. I mean, it was really brutal place. So every time my pass fails here,
you have a moment of like, oh my God, is my P45 coming? Like, what is going?
Post-traumatic stress kicks in.
Very triggering.
Yeah, it's very triggering. Although it's usually incompetence that sees my pass run out here, mine usually. But interesting that all those people are leaving. I'm sure we'll talk more about that in a moment. But let's just very quickly address my phone-in question, and that is about the royals. I mean,
oh, good God.
What an absolute...
You use the word stink. I'm going to have to sort of one-up you on that and say stench.
Yeah.
Just absolute...
You just wouldn't want him anywhere near you, would you? Or Fergie.
No, she absolutely was sort of, in it. And there's, just as I was literally on the way here, there seems to be this sort of... somebody's come across some emails which between her and her eldest daughter, talking about how she's going to remain friends. This is obviously sort of after he'd been released from the paedophile offences that he was actually kind of done for. How she and her daughter, I think it's Eugenie is the elder, whichever the elder one is, I don't want to actually get their names mixed up, talking about how it's important to frame the language around, Jeremy has served his penance and all of this kind of thing. So sorry, Jeffrey has served his he served his penance, and he should be able to move on from that. So yes, it's Fergie as well.
Beatrice is the oldest.
Sorry, Beatrice. Thank you. As I say, I sort of...
Yeah, I mean, I get them confused as well, but they're nowhere to be seen either. They must be horrified. I mean, they must be so... Especially, again, with both parents, right? I mean, look, just being in the Epstein files doesn't denote any wrong. They have to say that for legal reasons, and that Andrew, formerly known as Prince, has denied any wrongdoing, right? He's vehemently denied it. However... The stench, as you put it, around both of them, I mean, it is, as Rupert Bell said, scrubby. I mean, awful behaviour from both of them to be associated after he'd been convicted and continue a friendship with a convicted paedophile.
Yes, and of course, you know, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor continues to maintain his vehement denial, as you say. So, but then, at best, those photos that have emerged that you were sharing and sort of, you know, crouched everyone, at best, that's just excruciatingly embarrassing that you see your father, you know, for the girls, that you see your father literally in that position. And then, you know, we have had the Met saying we probably do kind of need to look at exactly, we need to take a look at his correspondence between Jeffrey Epstein and, you know, the forwarding on of what seemed to be official papers, you know, very quickly during
trade
or after
deals,
trade deals, and, you know, what advice, if in any kind of official or unofficial capacity, was provided about anything that Epstein may have been looking into, as, you know, apparently his wealth all came from finance deals. I mean, that's also part of the big mystery over this.
Is where all this
guys was where all this money came from, and you only ever sort of had, you know, one big client, and then there's just this, as I say, at best, just murkiness and kind of excruciating embarrassment of what can be seen to be former Prince Andrew's involvement with this guy. But you know, I fear this is, you know, this story's been trickling out since 2010, and now we're just getting, you know, it's been building momentum, and now in the, you know, the last week or so, there just has been this just tsunami of grot, which is engulfing, you know, our political cadre, is engulfing, you know, the royal family, and this is literally going right to the very, very tops of our, you know, the pillars of our institutions. And considering that I think it's about half of the Epstein files have been put out, and people haven't even finished going through all of them, which is why every day we're getting this new kind of, in this cache it was found that Fergie said this, or in this cache Andrew Mountbatten Windsor appeared to have followed this, or in this cache, actually, you know, what did you know, Beatrice or Regina or either of them know, or were they with their mother when she visited Epstein? So literally, it's a sort of daily, a daily dump of just grot, which I don't think we're remotely, you know, maybe we're just about halfway through, but certainly there's a lot more. Well,
there could also
to come.
There could also be arrests. There could also be, you know, a trial. There could be all sorts of things that go on. But in terms of comms, do you think that the King has done enough? Does he need to do more? Does William need to do more?
So I think obviously both. The King and there has been a marked change in the last few days by having gone, you know, further than royals have ever been known to go before, because it was always the conventional received with them, you know, never explain, you know, never comment, never explain, and obviously, you know, there has come a point in the House of Windsor that they realised they just couldn't do that. It's a different world. They just couldn't do that, and the volume of grot. You know, this isn't 15 years ago. This wasn't one awkward photo involving the then Prince Andrew. It wasn't even, you know, the infamous news night in 2019 that was horrifically embarrassing and caused a lot of headlines for all the wrong reasons, be it whether, you know, oh, Prince Andrew, I don't swear, or, you know, any of these just awful things that we remember. So, you know, I think on the one hand, yes, they have taken so many steps forward, and yes, you know, the combination of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor being, you know, the midnight flit, literally being got out of his home. It's not just about, oh, we're trying to find him somewhere else to live out. It's like, no, he's been gotten out. There were the stories over the weekend of, you know, King Charles has made the decision that now this guy, his brother, just needs to be put somewhere where he can be contained.
And can't be seen
Can't be seen grinning on horseback. is going to have to be provided with some kind of income from King Charles's purse, because any attempts that this guy has clearly ever made to in any way be anything competent making his own funds is a nonsense. And if you've not been able to do it before your age of 60 or sort of in your 60s, I don't think the guy is going to suddenly be able to start to be self-sufficient now, let alone if anybody were to want to touch him with the proverbial barge pole. So I think a combination of that from the King and a combination of this clear statement that yes, we will do anything we can help in any further investigations is just about going far enough. I do think there's probably going to be an absolute crunch tipping point, particularly with anything else that comes, that there will have to be some kind of actually, do you know what, you're my brother, but just you have to go to the United States now, and you have to you have to say, you have to say, and you have to be seen to be saying what you knew. And obviously, as my brother, I would hope that would all still mean that you weren't actually involved, but it's clear that you were.
Well, you should be there as a witness.
This is what I mean.
Least.
You were. It is clear.
You must have seen something.
Exactly. So the King must be thinking, obviously, as my brother, I can only hope you weren't ever involved, but you were intertwined to a level that you must have some knowledge of what were the perceived norms of Jeffrey Epstein's life over a considerable number of years. And I think we're getting quite close to that tipping point. And
where the King has to put pressure
to say
on
exactly, and the King to put pressure on his brother to do that particular bit of, no mate, you've tried to hedge this off for 15 years, you had your, the reported 11-12 million pounds settlement that mum, by the way, forked out of, you've done your level best to kind of wheedle your way out of it, and yes, of course, I want to believe your vehement denials, but you were in this.
Yeah.
At some level.
Yeah. Yeah, you were friends with
you were friends. You were involved in this man's life.
You stayed in the same house
for the 8 days that's now come out about. It wasn't the sort of flying visit of 2 or 3 days that he said. Actually, it was the 8 days.
And at least we know from other witnesses that atrocities were carried out in the places that Andrew stayed in. And even though they're not like coming round to my place where you'd know what was going on, but they're big houses, but still you'd get a sense of it. It's like the whole Jimmy Savile thing, isn't it?
Exactly. There's a whiff of something.
There's something. Yeah, and at least he should answer to that. I think everybody who's on the Epstein list should, including Donald Trump. Right, let's take a quick break and we'll come back and have a look at the papers in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good evening to you. This is Talk, and it's Petrie, and with me, Amy Fisher, former Director of Communications for the Conservative Party. And no, she didn't have to resign. So just saying. Let's have a look at the Times. Mandelson investigation will go back to the Blair era, because of course who took over from Blair was Brown, and it was during the Brown era that Mandelson allegedly sent these emails giving away very private information, secret, one could say, economic information. So now it's going to go back,
potentially financially sensitive. Yeah.
Going back, and apparently one of the tests of the law is if he knew they were financially sensitive. That's the test.
I'm not being funny, but the one that reported
the one
email,
that said top secret.
Yes, and the one that also said, yes, there's about to be a euro bailout. I mean, I don't think it takes you to be sort of an economic genius to go, oh, that might be quite interesting if people want to like bet on some currency exchanges.
Yeah.
I don't. And also the piece in the Times is actually talking about Mandelson's relationship with Epstein going back to sort of, well, in May 2002, he brokered a meeting between Blair and Epstein. So as you say, obviously the focus has been on when, you know, Mandelson held positions where he would be privy and have access to, some of which it seems quite clear he shared where he shouldn't have done, to sort of economically privileged information, and, you know, the various advice that he might give in actually to Jeffrey Epstein was not necessarily always in Britain's best financial interests. Certainly we're talking about, you know, some of the things that he was advising Epstein to pass on to some of his, you know, big chums at the head of the American JP Morgan, exactly, and the American banks. And oh yes, it may be time for, you know, JP Morgan to put a bit more pressure on Darling, who, by the way, was Peter Mandelson's boss at the time, and the Chancellor who was trying to get this country out of the financial grimballs that it was in. But anyway, Mandelson's relationship goes back to Epstein. In 2002, he brokered a meeting between Blair and Epstein. So this is not. So again, it comes down to, and certainly, you know, the mire that Keir Starmer is in. This wasn't a fly by night. No. I met this guy a few times at, you know, a drinks party.
Everybody knew he was.
And we kind of said hello, and we exchanged pleasantries and maybe a Christmas card. This is literally going back decades in a fundamental way, that they were rooted into each other. You know, they had this rooted sort of interest, and that, you know, Mandelson apparently allegedly received certain amounts of money.
Can't remember them, can he?
From Epstein, as I say, allegedly.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know the last time you couldn't remember when somebody, or £75,000 appeared in your bank account.
All the time.
But, you know, maybe that's the way you roll, Petrie. I don't want to make cast aspersions on your personal banking arrangements. And then Epstein, you know, clearly had a link into this guy who was, you know, right there at the top of British politics from the early 2000s onwards, and never went away, even, you know, 2010 when it was the coalition government onwards. You know, Mandelson, you know, was involved with sort of big, you know, big global corporate PR firms, and still was very much networked into some extremely senior people in this country.
Absolutely, and it's not as if, I mean, this is why I don't buy the whole Starmer I didn't know thing, because I mean, Mandelson was called the Prince of Darkness. He's been sacked from jobs before for bad behaviour, for, you know, inappropriate involving money, right? So it's not like nobody knew who Mandelson was. I think he's lost 2 or 3 jobs.
Twice.
Okay, twice. So it is interesting, but if it goes back to the Blair era, what was he handing over then? And of course Gordon Brown is gutted, isn't he? Because, you know, this man was, it seems, was actively trying to get Brown out and
undermine him. And so Gordon Brown had this. Look, obviously I was very much not a Gordon Brown supporter, you know, no surprise, I'm still Conservative in the world, but I always thought Gordon Brown himself was a rather decent man.
Yeah, I did as well.
I disagreed very much with his politics, very much, you know, he was a Labour Prime Minister. But certainly when he appeared over the weekend on Radio 4, it was a long 20-minute interview about Mandelson and how Mandelson had, you know, wormed, or whatever the right word is, his way into the whole of the well, he was at the heart of the, you know, New Labour project. And when, you know, hearing the former Prime Minister talk about his, you know, sadness, not only what this was meaning for politics now and for the current Labour Prime Minister, but how it was just corroding everything that any of, you know, when I say that Labour lot, I actually don't mean it pejoratively, but the Labour lot who came in 1997, and whatever I think of their politics, they were doing something transformational.
Yeah, they were.
I may not have agreed with it, but that doesn't mean that I can't recognise, you know, how it really did change the societal and political landscape of Britain at the time. And so to hear, as I say, Gordon Brown talking about, you know, not even just the grot now and the betrayal personal to him that Mandelson had inflicted, you know, 15 years ago, but what it actually meant for something that he, Gordon Brown, had worked for all his political life, and he didn't even realise that, you know, tainted, the rotten, the rottenness,
the snake in the grass,
the snake in the grass, you know, had sort of always to some degree been there, and I found that quite moving, actually.
Yeah, I do feel for him. I mean, I think the one thing I will always be grateful to Gordon Brown for is the separation of the state and the Bank of England.
Yes.
Because can you imagine what interest rates would be like at the moment if that hadn't been done? I mean, they went up to 16% at one point.
Yeah, crazy.
And so just that Gordon Brown saying, no, the Bank of England must set the rates, not the government, was the best single thing he did for this country, I think. The other story on the front page of the Times is terror police called in after a stabbing of boys at school. This is counter-terrorism. Officers are investigating a stabbing of 2 boys at a northwest London school, and a 13-year-old boy has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. I wonder why it's counter-terrorism. That's interesting to me.
I mean, does it make it better or worse?
I don't know. I suppose it's the intent, isn't it? Which would make it a terrorism.
But I'm not being facetious when I say, does it make it somehow more explicable that it may have been motivated for some kind of extremism, political view, or is it just that a 13-year-old picked up a knife and thought he'd stab some? I mean, either way, it's a horrible.
I mean, these kids at this age, the detectives say the attack had not been declared a terrorist incident, but the counter-terrorism officers were working with local police. I just find that interesting as to what we're not being told. Let's take a break. Back in a second.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good evening to you. It's Petrie, and with me Amy Fisher, former Director of Comms for the Conservative Party, looking at the Daily Mirror knives epidemics in our schools. The father of 12-year-old Leo Ross yesterday said his son's teenage killer should never be freed after he laughed at him from the dock. So this is a different case to the one we were just talking about. The 15-year-old got life with a minimum of 13 years for the Birmingham knife murder. Chris Ross said he's shown no remorse. I mean, what?
These are kids.
I know what is going on in their minds. It is absolutely.
You'd be killed at 12 by you're 12. You are literally still a kid. You should be playing, I don't know, on your bike or whatever. And look, knife crime had been and has been dropping relatively consistently since sort of high point of about 2009. 10, and actually we've just had a real sort of 4-year sort of downward trend, apart from the last 12 months where there has been another sudden spike. No one's actually particularly sure caused by what. There have been a couple of successful sort of knife amnesty campaigns by the previous government, and to give credit where credit is due, this one where there's literally a bin where you can go and dump your knife in, and sort of actually some tens of thousands have been done. But clearly the horror has not gone away. And also my sister's a primary school teacher. This obviously is at the it's not quite in primary schools yet, but some of what she describes going on, even for the children younger than 10, 11 for it is a primary school, is genuinely frightening to me. So in terms of the actual physical abuse she as a teacher has suffered, and I've seen the bruises.
Wow.
And actually
that's kids under 11, isn't it?
Yes, kids under 11. And then actually some of the sort of
and 15-year-old boys can be big.
She has to break up. So but my point about saying is, if I know from my sister's personal experience what the situation can be like in primary schools, there's part of me that just thinks actually, when these kids are 2, 3, 4 years old, at 15 they've already, some of the we hit 6 foot and all of this kind of thing. I can only imagine what the extrapolation of sort of the fear, both for the teaching staff as well. They're trying to work there and be motivated by public service, as well as the other kids. I mean, I can't imagine having a child and sending the child off and then wondering if my child was scared of being stabbed that day.
I know.
I mean, that is a
horrifying
bonkers situation.
I know there's a mum, I wonder if it's Leo's mum, I can't remember, I was reading last week saying that she wanted knife archers.
Which they have in America, which has been standard in a significant proportion of American schools for some time now. And maybe that is the only thing in Britain that we can do at this point. But wouldn't that just be a terribly
very sad,
a physical manifestation of, oh God, we've lost control. We've lost control of essentially law and order in our schools. I don't quite know how else to put it. If you have to put knife archers up on the way into schools, you are saying, yeah, we've lost control of law and order here.
It's like you said, it's that physical. That's what it looked. It's just awful. It's just such a shame. The Daily Star has resurrected the lettuce. This time, it's got Keir Starmer's glasses on it,
and the wig.
And the wig. PM's a limp lettuce. Life was just perfect for Larry, the number 10 cat, and then came along those Epstein files and the shocking revelations about Peter Mandelson and his boss's choice of US ambassador. So, Larry, this is a story from Larry the cat's point of view. Get me out of here. That's a good headline. I like that.
Yeah, and look, I think Larry, the mouser, the Downing Street mouser, I think Larry tends to generally weather the storms of whatever drama is going on in number.
He does not care.
Number
Larry.
10, so I think.
No, he doesn't care a jot. So that's the story on the Star. I wonder if they interviewed Larry the cat. Probably. The Daily Telegraph Terror probe into school stabbing. The pupils remain in hospital after American-style attack. Well, if it was American-style, it'd be a gun, wouldn't it? That's what.
Yes, well, that's a sad reality.
And Tesco boss warns Starmer over worklessness. Britain is sleepwalking into a workless epidemic with millions out of a job and on benefits.
Yeah, so Tesco is obviously one of the actual sort of major employers in the UK. Actually, I think specifically, significantly so in Wales, and the Tesco boss is highlighting these stats, which we sort of all know but kind of forget about, which is obviously something quite materially changed during the pandemic, and now certainly between that younger cohort of the 16 to 24-year-olds, of those in unemployment and not in education or training, is up sort of 26% on what it was pre-pandemic. I mean, unemployment figures are up overall, but it's that young cohort that are particularly worrying, because we are literally talking about people drifting through into a kind of place where they will never have had a job, like just don't know what it is to go out and do something for 8 hours a day, and at the end of it you get paid a certain amount of money, which allows you to go and do other things and pay your rent. And so obviously the feeding into that of the entire reliance on what we already know to be the sort of burgeoning welfare system. I mean, this is a specific warning to Starmer. I mean, as a broad collective, as a country, we all should be worried about this. All of us who live here and pay into the welfare bill, but the welfare bill, Starmer just doesn't seem to want to go near it. And every time he has his efforts to in any way curtail it, have been blown up by his own party in his face. So, along with the many other things that will be troubling the PM, if we are to believe the message that he apparently has delivered. I would note, behind closed doors, the Parliamentary Labour Party, that he's more focused than ever and very much for delivering Britain, the country that he loves, as I say, wanted to get those messages all behind closed doors. Then certainly amongst NHS, small boats, this issue of the worklessness and this quite frightening trend that we have seen take hold is not going away, and that certainly cannot be slipping down his in tray. No, it really can't, because there are fewer and fewer of us working to pay for more and more people. Yes, and we're an ageing population, and we're going to end up with the inverted pyramid. Exactly, and the whole thing will collapse then. I mean, there needs to be workers, but like you said, it's more concerning because people are choosing welfare. That 16 to 24-year-old cohort, have just not experienced being employed, and there is nothing to incentivise them to go and get a job. So actually, the way you pay for life becomes benefits. Yeah, and that's you alter your life according to those, and that's just it. Yes, this is definitely a shot across Starmer's bow, and one that he cannot afford to ignore. Yeah, and the Winter Olympics that nobody's talking about. That's because I don't understand any of it. I don't understand any of it either. I don't get it. But somebody crying. But this story is quite extraordinary, because this was the chap who sort of won a medal, then as part of his saying, "Oh, I'm so thrilled for my sporting achievement," kind of live on air went, "I'm just so upset my girlfriend can't be here to enjoy it with me because I cheated on her." It's a really very strange kind of cheating. I thought it was sports-like cheating. No, he was talking about a romantic. Oh dear. Why would you do that? Oh, 3 months ago I cheated on her. Well. So it sort of, obviously the moment became a little much for him. Extraordinary men. Right, the Guardian, Streeting still intent on deposing PM despite United Front say allies. Has Starmer got to get rid of him? Well, I don't think he can, because whilst everyone can see exactly the manoeuvres that Streeting has been on, and the pretty punchy hand he played with the, sort of actively revealing the messages between Mandelson, hoping to obviously lance whatever boil, perceived or otherwise, there may have been there about how closely he, Wes Streeting, was going to be, sucked into this mire of Mandelson scandal, you know, trying, as Wes Streeton would say it, to get ahead of that. I mean, it was just shameless. I mean, there was also a question in it about cabinet responsibility, because obviously in some of the messages he's saying that he doesn't agree with X, Y, and Z, and no, we don't have a growth strategy. And, you know, if you're a member of the cabinet, you're sort of not meant to say that out loud, because that's kind of the whole point of being in the cabinet and presenting a united front. Yeah. To be a bit blunt about it. But anyway, so I don't see as how Keir can, because yes, whilst it's so blindingly obvious what he's doing, he sort of hasn't revealed so much of his hand. I mean, he hasn't challenged Starmer. He's publicly supported him.
Yes, but I mean, there's so much gossip about it, isn't there? About him, and even suggestions that he, you know, stitched up Anas Salwa about declaring that. I mean, there are those rumours that are going around, and surely that's untenable for the Prime Minister.
Also, Petrie, if everybody, you know, in senior positions from the cabinet down got sacked because there were a few rumours about them, it would be very hard for a government of any hue to form a cabinet at any point. So to that extent, whilst we can all see what Wes Streeting is doing, I mean, because there's just not that much hiding it, I don't think it's actually crossed that line into be out and out insubordination and a full-on public declaration on Keir Starmer's position.
It's just a bit sneaky, though, isn't it?
I don't think it's sneaky. I think it's blatant. But he just hasn't done quite. He just hasn't done quite enough to justify an actual.
I just love the fact that Anas, close pal of Keir, phoned him first and said, "I'm going to call for your resignation."
Yes, and they both sort of said it was a heated. We didn't agree during the phone call.
We didn't agree.
Well, I mean, what did you expect him to say? Oh, great, mate, thank you. I'm having the worst day of my political career anyway, but I appreciate the heads up.
The other story, actually, which I think will become bigger news, is the EU yesterday moved closer to creating offshore centres for migrants and asylum seekers after centre-right and far-right MEPs united to agree on tougher migration policies. This potentially has been a long time coming, hasn't it? But this is also the whole of this is the EU, of course, not Britain, not us, but agreeing to offshore centres for migrants to have their asylum cases heard away from Europe.
Well, I think it was. The away from Europe bit is specifically interesting. I think it was, you know, sort of Oliver Letwin who proposed having an offshore centre possibly on Gibraltar in about 2004. So no, the idea of processing such claims onshore is certainly not new either. But
this is because Italy wanted to set them up in Albania, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and there's a sort of irony in that of the many reasons why Britain, you know, went for Brexit, rightly or wrongly, that now it is the EU bloc that's actually moving to
create offshore,
to firmer positions in terms of this offshore processing, and we look like we're going to. Excuse me.
Yeah, well, we'll have to, but unfortunately we can't join in with them on that.
No.
Let's take a break, and Amy and I'll be back in a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good evening to you. This is Talk and it's Petrie, and with me is Amy Fisher, who's former Director of Comms for the Conservative Party. The Metro, this is an extraordinary story. The Home Alone menace is locked up. This is 7 years in jail for a drug dealer who filled his house with booby traps like the movie hero Kevin in Home Alone.
So as I understand it, this was sort of various booby traps that he was growing cannabis plants, and so he sort of set up this perimeter that involved not just the old tripwire in an amusing family-friendly fashion, as the reference to Home Alone would suggest, but had built his own pipe bombs and had turned what would have been like a legal fire extinguisher that you can have in your home or your garage, has all turned that into a flamethrower. I mean, there's a certain amount of ingenuity. If he's that clever to do that, get a job, right? Well, that's the classic thing about sort of criminals, though. If a lot of the time, leaving aside the ones in prison because they've been caught, but a lot of prison, criminals, if they put sort of half the effort into running actual businesses or startups, they've clearly got the sort of nous and the know-how and the drive. And so, this guy had set up his own little mini fortress, and I assume...
And electrocuted a fence.
Yeah, and I assume Riley was saying that he'd been inspired by, the early 90s classic with McCorney, Culkin, because he'd obviously taken matters quite seriously if you're building, as I say, your own pipe bombs and flamethrower.
I mean, like you said, a lot of engineering, a lot of effort.
A lot of
effort into that. Starmer's number 10 spin doctor loses Labour whip over link to sex offender. I was saying earlier, it's rather unfortunate that he looks a bit like Ron Farris.
This is an unfortunate physical...
I'm just saying it because you'll notice it now. You'll see that. This is the eye paper.
You've seen it, you can't unsee it, essentially.
You can't unsee it.
I mean, I thought you were going to say it was unfortunate that this, of all weeks, the sort of second friend of a pedo sex offender seems to have come along. This headline, whilst this chap Matthew Doyle was an ex-number 10 spin doctor, he had actually worked for a long time in opposition with Keir Starmer as well. So this is actually quite problematic. And again, because we haven't really talked about the sort of one of the PM's lines has been, yes, I was naive, I shouldn't have trusted, the advice I was given. Yes, I was definitely wrong to have appointed Mandelson to the position. And then, some of the debate has flipped to, well, what were the failures in vetting? It seems that many people quite commonly knew what Epstein was about, but how was it that then this sort of wasn't passed on through the vetting to Starmer? Well, look, if this chap, Lord Doyle here, had these connections and links for a period of time to a sex offender, again, isn't that the sort of thing that should come up at the committee that considers who to give peerages to?
Yeah, because this man took his peerage, given by the PM in December, and he took his seat in the Lords just last month.
As I said, this is very
despite questions.
This is very unfortunate timing.
About his friendship with a convicted paedophile.
And of all the things that sort of should set alarm bells going when people are being considered of positions for high public service, which either being a peer or being, obviously in Peter Mandelson's case, ambassador, having sort of long-term links to sort of people who've been convicted of sex offences. I mean, wouldn't that be one of the things that would
definitely be a red flag?
Bells.
I mean, you're not guilty necessarily by association. But if I was,
but it goes to your judgment, doesn't it? If somebody has been convicted, and this is the problem with Epstein. Like he was convicted of serious crimes, and for a long time after that, people like Mandelson and the former, Prince Andrew chose to hang out with him. So, look, in some cases, they may not have known everything, but they would have known. There are some things that would have been known, and then it goes to their judgment that they still chose to associate themselves with him.
Yeah, and I always tell this story about my dad who worked at the BBC, you know, while Jimmy Savile was there. And I wanted to go on a particular programme that Jimmy Savile did, and my dad said absolutely not. And when it all came out about Savile, I said to my dad, did you know? And he said, well, he said, I was certainly told never to let my daughter be anywhere near him. He said, but we sort of knew but didn't know. So, but you know, that's the same thing, isn't it?
But this is what I mean about making a judgment.
Exactly.
A judgment call. Even if you may not literally have a sort of black and a white or, you know, further criminal convictions, you get enough, and people do this the whole time. People do this the whole time, by the way. When you meet somebody, you know, through work, or you meet somebody, you know, new in the pub, you make judgments about people and what you think of their character and whether you want to choose to associate yourself with them all the time. This is what we as humans do in social interactions. Yes. So you cannot tell me when it's in such heightened and important positions of political power and representing Great Britain, and these things are known in this case by a couple of Starmer's, you know, sort of political associates, that you can't have had a whiff of something. You know, a spidery sense going off, which, as I say, is what we, you know, as humans use in our relations with people all the time.
You know, that person's a bit creepy.
And that's how the world works.
Yeah, I know. It does just show that how out of touch Keir Starmer could potentially be, doesn't it, really? The Financial Times, just very quickly, the Commerce Secretary Lutnick, Howard Lutnick, had denied any relationship with Epstein, and then it's come to light that he actually visited the sex offenders island in 2012, so after the conviction, with his family. And he went, oh yeah, no, I'd forgotten about that. But this is all going to come out now, isn't it?
Again, there's going to be more of these. But it goes back to my point about, you know, do you forget last time that you randomly got 75 grand? Do you randomly forget visiting a huge
paedophile's island?
You know, Caribbean private island? It just slipped your mind.
Of a convicted paedophile.
It's just very strange, and yeah, there'll be many more of this kind of.
I think so as well, and they just look bad. They just look like they're liars, don't they? The Daily Mail revealed where shamed Fergie's hiding while plotting return. I say don't bother returning, Fergs. To what?
I don't particularly wish to hear anything more from her.
No, I can't think where to or what she could return to. I mean, her charity was suspended, I think, last week. Okay, this is the story. The teen held for terror stabbing of boys. The answer to the question that I was asking is why the terror police were involved. Witnesses claim that the attacker shouted Allahu Akbar during rampage at London school. I think from a 13-year-old boy, we have to wait and see to get more information.
Yeah, I agree.
About what that could reveal. And the Daily Express has gone with a completely different story.
Slightly wild card.
Slightly wild card. Labour's taxes are a shameful assault on high streets.
I don't disagree with the point, but certainly in the sort of mix of the news about today, this is a real Express wildcard. As I say, I don't disagree with it.
I don't disagree with it. It's just odd, isn't it?
Just slightly left field.
Yeah, just is that what people are thinking about right now? And then a lovely picture actually of Melania Trump. Is Melania the real star of the White House? Well, not according to her movie that bombed.
It's not been wildly popular,
no, it's not been wildly popular. I think in Australia they sold one ticket across the country, I think. Anyway, Amy Fisher, thank you very much indeed. That went quickly, didn't it? Former Director of Communications for the Conservative Party, thank you. Right, coming up, it's just you and me, and so give me a call. We're talking about the monarchy. Has this crisis affected it beyond repair? Give me a call.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good morning to you. It is Petrie here with you for the next hour, and this is your chance to talk back. We've tracked down Sarah Ferguson. There you go, that was quick, wasn't it? Because we were just talking to Amy there about her making a comeback. Well, it appears that Sarah Ferguson has been globe-trotting. I wonder who's been paying for it. And is plotting an astonishing comeback to public life. It would be astonishing. It can be revealed that she is lying low and has been in the United... she recently was in the French Alps before moving to the UAE. She's also been spending time with her youngest daughter, Princess Eugenie, who's been in the region for work, attending an art fair in Doha. Her role as director of a dealer for Hauser and Wirth. Anyway, she's... I need to get back to work, she said. I need money. That's been the root of your problem, Fergie, dare I say. That has been the root of your issues, is your love of money. I need to get back to work. Fascinating, she's made it clear that this future does not include her ex-husband. Until recently, they continued to live together in the Royal Lodge. Over the years, the former royal... Should Sarah Ferguson try to come back to public life? Who do you think... How is that going to be possible? I mean, if Philip Schofield's finding it difficult to come back to public life, I think that perhaps Sarah Ferguson might find it a little bit more difficult, right? I mean, she was literally friends with a paedophile. Philip Schofield had a consensual relationship with a younger man. I don't know whether we're ready to welcome Sarah Ferguson back. Just saying. But anyway, that's what she's planning. When I come home, I'm going to have to put some distance between myself and Andrew, she said. She will not join him at his new home. But friends believe she's kidding herself if she thinks she can pick up where she left off and return to any kind of normal life. Emails between the ex-Duchess and Epstein show her repeatedly chasing him for money to pay off her debts, as well as practical support over a considerable period of time. They contain evidence she remained close contact with him after he was released from prison for sex offences against children, even taking her two daughters, Princess Beatrice and Eugenie, to have lunch with him 5 days after his release. She also privately issued a grovelling apology to Epstein for publicly denouncing him, claiming she only did so to protect her career as a children's author. Oh dear God. She told him she'd been steadfast, generous and a supreme friend to Epstein. The Daily Mail reported that friends seemed keen to emphasise the disparity of the allegations facing Miss Ferguson and Andrew. Blah, blah. Anyway, while the evidence about her dealing with Epstein is deeply troubling, she has not been accused of any criminal wrongdoing or criminal activity, unlike the King's brother, who has also denied any wrongdoing. Christ, all this legal stuff you've got to do. But anyway, there you go. That's where she is. She's in the UAE and she's planning to come back into public life. We don't want you. Well, I don't. Do you want her back? Give me a call. 0344 499 1000. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about the royals. What could rescue the monarchy now? There are suggestions that the monarchy's done, that it's finished, that the stench of the scandal involving Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is just too big a deal, that they're not going to recover from this. And it's gone as far as in the United States, where a congressman, Ro Khanna, talked about Andrew and King Charles. Have a listen.
Question, if I may. What did you say to the man formerly known as Prince Andrew Peter Mandelson, with regard to giving evidence to your committee?
Well, Mandelson may bring down the whole government, from what I hear. You know, he just engaged in terrible behavior. I mean, the allegations are very serious that he was working for Gordon Brown and then feeding information about UK possibly buying euros and having Epstein trade on that. I mean, it is a deeply, deeply troubling. And you know, Epstein's, I saw this interview with Epstein's former girlfriend talking about how someone is a loser if they weren't mentioned in the Epstein files. It's a window into the elite impunity, this club. And by the way, I think this is the most vulnerable the British monarchy has ever been. I mean, I heard they were asking the Queen questions about the Epstein class. They ought to ask the King and Queen questions, and maybe this will be the end of the monarchy.
Well, do you think it could be the end of the monarchy?
Well, if they don't have answers, or if they're implicated with an Epstein class, not a good look for the British monarchy.
What questions does the King have to answer?
Well, the King has to answer what he knew about Andrew. And just stripping Andrew of a title is not enough. I mean, Andrew needs to come before our committee and start answering questions.
So that was Ro Khanna. The thing is, I would want to say to him that, yes, Andrew is mentioned in the Epstein files a few times. I don't know how many. So is Peter Mandelson. But Donald Trump has been mentioned over 38,000 times. They're not asking him to answer questions as to what he knew, what he might have known, what he might have seen during his friendship with Epstein. And as I repeatedly have to keep saying, just been mentioned in the Epstein files, even as it is thousands and thousands of times, does not indicate criminal behaviour. But it does indicate that you may have been around some stuff, and you may have seen some stuff, or you may have thought you'd seen some stuff. So it's all very well for Ro Khanna, who I respect, by the way, standing there and saying, well, it's not enough to strip Andrew of his titles, he needs to be here answering questions, right back at you with your lot. There's a hell of a lot of very powerful men in America who have been fortunate enough to have their names redacted, except the Democrat ones. So I think really, you know, sort your own house out before you try to tear ours down. I think that's what I'd say to Ro. Anyway, what about the state of the monarchy? I mean, look, it cannot be understated how much damage Andrew Mountbatten Windsor has done to the House of Windsor. It is unbelievable, really, just how bad it has got, and I fear how much worse it is going to get every day, because this 3 million tranche that was released of the Epstein files, people are still going through it, they're still finding connections, they're still sorting things out. There was 180,000 photographs, for example, and 2,000 videos. And that's only half of the files, right? So the chances are this is going to get a lot worse. It could get a lot worse. And already the Metropolitan Police are looking into some of the claims about Prince Andrew to see if he's got anything to answer for. Should they find that he has something to answer for, we could see a former prince being arrested, potentially charged, potentially facing a trial. I'm just trying to point out to you that this could get worse, although Andrew denies, of course, any wrongdoing. But if the police believe he's got questions to answer, and it may not be about Virginia Giuffre, I think that case is done now, because Virginia's now dead, and she was paid off. But you know, it could be about this young woman that was allegedly flown to London for Andrew's pleasure, which is basic trafficking, and it could be about him potentially passing privileged information to Epstein. But I don't think this is just going to stop here. And I think the royals would be incredibly naive to think that it could stop here. Has Charles done enough, do you think, to kind of step away from Andrew? Would you want to see him do more? Would you want to see him compel Andrew, order him to face the committee, the Epstein committee? Now, he doesn't even have to travel for it. They've said they'll do it on Zoom link. Mind you, last time he put himself in front of a camera, it was an absolute disaster for him, wasn't it? That Newsnight interview. Cool. Stephen has said, why do we need a royal family? Like, why do we need a government in our day? We never did. We never did we? Need a government in our day. I think we've always needed, well, they've not ever done very much. But I don't know, I mean, look, a lot of people would say they don't want the royal family, you know, and you know, do you know, I'm a bit ambivalent about it. I'm not really, I'm kind of like, you know, I think they do some good. I think, you know, being able to send William to meet with the Saudi prince as a piece of soft power is an important tool that we've got, the same as, you know, the king welcoming Trump to the UK to try and get us a better trade deal. Felt a lot of good that did us, but still, yeah, I think that those things are quite important. I think they're, like I said, they're tools in our arsenal. I think that they're potentially important things to have. But you can't get away from the stink of Andrew and Fergie. The more you learn about Sarah Ferguson, it's just grubby, isn't it? I mean, as if it wasn't grubby enough with the whole fake shake thing where she was trying to sell access to the royals in that hotel room. Do you remember that? God, so embarrassing. She's always been a grifter, but it's grubby, and I just wish they'd go away. Chris has called from Guernsey. I love Guernsey.
Hello. Yeah.
Hello, Chris. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
New caller to the programme. What made you pick up the phone?
I'm a new caller because I regularly listen to the radio stations, very impressed with the output on the whole. But can I make a comment about the latest royal scandal thing?
Yeah, of course. That's exactly what I want you to do.
I just think it's gone all a bit too far. I mean, I love and respect the royal family, and I would do anything in my power to support them. And by relentlessly bashing them, you're just grinding them into the ground, dragging them into the ground, like with Lady Diana when they hounded her to her death, the media people. And now with social media and everything, they're doing the same thing to poor Prince Charles and his family. I mean, they are a family of people. They're trying to do a job. I think people should just respect that and give them, you know, just respect them. Not try and hound, you know, dig up as much dirt as they can on them. It's just horrible. Any family that people started digging up all sorts of dirt on them, you know, it's so, you know.
But don't you think it's relevant dirt when it's on Prince Andrew? Right, I mean the former prince of the realm. You know, who's you know, we've as taxpayers have paid towards his upkeep and paid towards his living. And the fact that if he did, as the business envoy, share secrets with anyone, let alone a paedophile, then that is something he shouldn't have done against us, his country, the people of this country. It's not the same as just going and, you know, finding out about his latest diet or his latest girlfriend. This is slightly more significant than that, wouldn't you say?
But these are not politicians, and like it or not, they are not elected. And they are families trying to do a job, and they've done a damn good job, in my opinion. And I don't know much about Prince Andrew, but he's the brother of the king.
That doesn't give him carte blanche. That doesn't give him the right.
No, it doesn't. But these people are in the limelight constantly. They're under enormous stress and pressure. They may do things in or be dragged into things by, for instance, Chinese spy rings. I'm not saying that was the cause, but essentially they were dragged into this and inculcated. And it's a step-by-step pressure they put on people. And then they get something on, and then they've got the leverage. This is how they undermine our country. This is how our country's falling down the chute.
But do you think that Prince?
Sorry,
But do you think Prince Andrew is an innocent bystander then? That he was somehow targeted by Epstein and naively got involved with this man?
I don't know the ins and outs of it. I'm not party to that. But there are wheels within wheels in these spy rings, and some other countries are not as scrupulous and as transparent as Britain is.
Well, we're terrible.
Some very opaque regimes. We don't know what goes on in these regimes.
But do you think that we should stop?
When they're undermining our own democracy, and the King Charles is part of our democracy. He's a foundation, a pillar of the foundation of our great country. I'm sorry, I feel really passionate about this. I mean,
no, you do, and that's good. But I'm just wondering. So, do you think we should not be talking about Prince Andrew and what he may or may not have done? Do you think we should just drop it?
Well, I don't think he should swept under the carpet, but the fact that he's the King's brother, it should be done with decorum. And I just think
why?
The incessant media pressure was what handed Lady Diana to her death. I know media a lot more. Their standards have raised a lot since poor Lady Diana's demise. But nevertheless, this sort of constant pressure,
But it's not pressure that we have forced on Prince Andrew. He sent those emails. Fergie sent the emails begging for money. We've seen those from a convicted paedophile. You know, and he had been convicted. This is nobody can say, oh, well, I was friends with him before this happened, when we've got proof that they were friends with him after he was convicted. You know, Fergie's there sending emails to Epstein saying, well, if you pay my flights, I'll go first class, the girls can go in economy, and we'll meet you for lunch, and you'll have to pay for our return ticket as well. I mean, that's a bit, doesn't that worry you? Or do you think we shouldn't be talking about it? Does that not say something?
Well, I won't descend into that debate, I'm afraid. And again, I'm not party to the details. I've said what I feel. I mean, I won't change my feelings. I mean, to be honest with you, Andrew has not been convicted of anything.
No, you're right, and he's always declared his innocence. But more and more information is coming out. The police are now investigating some of this evidence. And do you think that we shouldn't be? The police shouldn't be doing that?
The families have connections. The poorest family living on a council estate has connections with people.
But it sounds like you're being an apologist for him.
Well, they are friends with other people. I'm sorry, but the world isn't just black and white. There's not a group of innocent people who have never done anything wrong. Because if you dig deep enough and far enough, you will find dirt on almost anybody. And this is what the corrupt regimes around the world want to do. They want to undermine our democracy by digging up all this dirt and flinging it on us. And, oh, some of it sticks. Great. Oh, great. We've got some leverage. Great. Put some pressure there.
But look, the king himself was convinced enough of his brother doing the wrong thing that he stripped him of his titles. So that's the king himself saying, yeah, okay, I need to distance myself from this guy if the monarchy is to survive, because he is, you know, it's the, you know, the cancer. They've got to cut him away from the royal family, and so the king himself has put Andrew into exile on an estate in Norfolk. So I don't know why you think that we're being particularly mean to Andrew when the king himself has exiled his own brother. He's not showing leniency, is he?
I believe that Jesus Christ was born to save our sins. And before you accuse another person, look at the dirt in your own eye.
Well, I've never been friends with a convicted paedophile.
I'm not saying you have. I wasn't directed at you. But before you accuse, you know, ye who cast the first stone. You cast the first stone.
But I don't understand how that applies in this case, because King Charles is the one that stripped Andrew of his titles. I don't know how that applies.
I'm just saying, you're claiming that it's objective reporting. Well, I don't accept that. I'm sorry.
You don't believe it's objective reporting?
I think there's undue pressure, extreme pressure, like what handed Lady Diana.
Why is it undue reporting to ask a question of callers? I haven't declared. At no point could you go back on this conversation in the last 3 hours and declare and heard me say anything untoward.
Even stripped of his titles, he is still the king's brother. I'm sorry.
Yes, but the king stripped him of his titles.
And that's what I'm saying. Even though he stripped of his title, he's still the king's brother.
That doesn't mean anything to me. Why would that mean anything to me? Why would the fact that he's the king's brother allow him to get away with anything? He has no legal rights. He has no legal protections.
He hasn't been convicted of anything. He does not allow us to get away with anything. He has not been...
No, and I have constantly and continuously repeated that he has denied all allegations against him and has said that he's not part of any wrongdoing. However, it doesn't stop us asking the question, does it?
Well, we can make a moral judgment, of course.
I'm not making a moral judgment, I'm asking a question.
No, what the moral judgment is that what happened with the paedophile Epstein was totally reprehensible, not acceptable, 100%.
So you've just made a moral judgment?
He went to prison for that, yes.
Right.
Rightly so.
And you don't think it's...
If he did that, if he did the things that he was convicted of, then he deserved his punishment. There's no doubt.
If he did the thing... Gosh, you sound like a real apologist. If he did the things he was accused of.
Well, all I'm saying is I haven't read the documents. I've got...
But then you're not in a position to have this conversation, are you? You're accusing me of false reporting or whatever it is you're accusing me of. And yet I have read the documents, not all 3 million of them, but I have read substantially enough. And I don't think that just because somebody is the king's brother, it means that they have some special treatment. In fact, according to the law, he has no different treatment than you and I.
Nevertheless, they're dragging the king into this. That's not right. They're dragging the king into this.
Who's dragging the king into
it? Well, the media, the politics, the politicians.
Well, we have a right to ask the question.
No, not
the king isn't a god. The king isn't your god, is he? He's a man.
He's a spiritual leader of the Christian church.
But he's not a god. I thought you only had one god, so you've got two now. You believe that King Charles and God are equal.
No, King Charles is the head of state. He's also the head of the church.
That doesn't mean anything. The Pope is the head of a church, and there's lots of paedophiles in the Catholic Church. That means nothing.
You know, I know nothing about that.
You know nothing about paedophiles in the Catholic Church and the Anglican Church. You know nothing about that.
Unlike the media, I'm not obsessed with that sort of subject.
Well, perhaps you ought to educate yourself about it.
Perhaps some people, if they didn't have dirty minds in the first place, they wouldn't latch on to all this stuff.
What do you mean a dirty mind? I'm not the one raping little boys and girls. It's Catholic priests that are doing it.
I'm not obsessed with sex all the time, which the media seems to be. They're always obsessed with it.
No, we're obsessed with damage done to innocent victims, like children who are raped by priests, like paedophiles who rape children on Epstein Island. We're obsessed with the victims.
The media is not just in isolation. You're part of society as well. The media, they're part of the problem as well. Sorry.
How? If we don't ask these questions of sex offenders, for whom you seem to be a little bit of an apologist, I don't understand. Because we're concerned with the victims. Why aren't you concerned with the victims?
So I do resonate with the right-wing radio stations like yourself and GB News, but I think you're all part of the same London media elite. You have your own agenda.
What are you talking about? Because we're questioning abuse of children, that makes us what? Sex mad?
What about the Muslim rape gangs?
Well, they rape children too. Yeah, that's wrong too.
Well, that's all being forgotten about, hasn't it?
No, that's not being forgotten about. I literally don't understand what your point is here. But as people in the media, it is our job to ask questions of people, and certainly in high positions, who are not above or beyond the law. That is our job. That is what we're paid to do. And when it comes to somebody being the head of a church, that doesn't make them any more special than anybody else, because they're not a god. I don't happen to believe in God, you do, but the king is just a man, and therefore subject to the same morals, the same laws as everybody else. And certainly Andrew is.
No offence,
they're not special.
You claim to be alternative to the mainstream news.
I don't claim anything.
Well, GB News, they follow all the same articles that the mainstream media follow, just with a different spin on it. You're part of the conspiracy, the London liberal elite, media elite, and Facebook and all that stuff, and YouTube and all that.
Well, I am, personally.
You collectively, you're all part of the same conspiracy.
Well, I don't know why you bother listening then. If you're so convinced, but you don't even know about Catholic priests raping children for decades. An Anglican church raping children for decades. You don't even know about that. That's your conspiracy, because you don't want to know.
I have 3 jobs and I support my wife. I get on with life.
Good for you. So I
may have the king of my country slighted, which he has been.
He hasn't. What are you talking about? I am asking if the monarchy can survive this. Andrew has been slighted because of his own behaviours and being friends with Epstein. Nobody's slighted the king. Not one person.
But the king has disassociated himself from Andrew, as you know.
But you've just said to me he can't disassociate from him because he's his brother.
He's his brother. That means
yeah, well, you're the one that pulled that association. He can't disassociate himself, can he? You've just said that.
He's got blood ties to me, exactly. So it's unfair of the media to put pressure on him whether he could choose.
Nobody's putting pressure on the king.
Oh, come on, there's been media article after media article.
About Andrew.
No, but you're dragging the king into this. That's not right.
What? How are we dragging? The king is the king and is Andrew's brother. He's dragged into it whether he likes it or not.
I just want to make it clear the king's done nothing wrong.
Nobody has said the king's done anything wrong. Nobody.
So why do you refer to them collectively as the monarchy?
What could rescue the monarchy? Because the monarchy is a collective, isn't it? And a lot of people are suggesting this could be the end of the monarchy.
I mean, that sounds treasonous to me. That sounds like a treasonous comment.
Does it? I tell you what, I'm going to advise you to go and do this church that you love so much. Go and check out the sexual abuse against children and minors that your church has been carrying out in plain sight. Then perhaps we can have a conversation. Chris, thank you very much indeed. I'm going to take a break.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning. This is Talk, and it is Petrie, and it is your opportunity to talk back, and I hope you take that opportunity. We're talking about the monarchy. which, as we know, is a collective name for the royal family. And can the monarchy survive what's going on with Andrew, who had all of his titles stripped from him by his brother, the king? Not by us, but by the king himself, who clearly wanted to distance himself from somebody who is his brother. And now Andrew has been sent off into exile in Norfolk, and probably the king is probably hoping that there's no more revelations to come out. However, the Metropolitan Police are looking into whether or not Andrew may have committed any form of crime with his association with Jeffrey Epstein. So that's the status quo. Andrew has always denied any wrongdoing. Also talking about Sarah Ferguson and her now plans to come back to public life after all the stuff we know about her friendship with Epstein. It would seem extraordinary to me that she believes that she can come back to public life. Zarina has said, I'm sick of Sarah Ferguson. She's been involved in scandals since she married into our royal family. Money for access, the foot scandal. Oh, I forgot about the foot scandal, Zarina. Was she sucking somebody's toe or something? I can't remember. And Epstein, who does she think she is? One thing, though, she has been spared any criminal charges. It can't continue. Yeah, I mean, look, again, a strange friendship to have with somebody, very odd, but no, nothing criminal, but just odd, right? And it does bring shame on the royal family, whether you like it or not. Gary has said, just listening to that chap, Chris, what on earth was he going on about, making no sense? Andrew has to face the full force of the law if crimes are proven. He has no protection from the king. No. No. The full force of the law, if it is applied, he can't avoid that. He just can't. Quite a few comments. You're getting quite a lot of comments here, Chris. Quite a few. Let's go to Grace now, who's in London. Grace, good morning. How are you?
I'm very blessed, thank you. How are you?
Good. I'm very well, thank you. What do you think about this?
Oh, so many things. I had been wanting, following on from a conversation we had a couple of weeks ago, I didn't get around to it in the end, to saying that the abuse that has happened within religious institutions is beyond words abhorrent and evil and disgusting, and that we as Christians need to, I myself being a Christian, I know that you're not, need to be able to say that.
Absolutely, and to call it out, because it's wrong, right?
Yes. And it brings to my mind how Jesus very often argued with religious people who weren't actually trying to follow God. They were trying to use religion as a way to get dominance over others. Yeah. And for some predators, that's what churches have been. They have been, for some people, a way that they can access victims and pretend to be morally superior whilst they're actually doing evil things that are not in line with how God taught us to treat each other. So we need to be able to say that. And there have been efforts by churches to clamp down on abuse, but there's more that needs to be done. But we can't...
I mean, the new Archbishop was talking about this just yesterday. Yesterday. Yeah. And for a Christian man to not know about the wrong that the church has done and continues to do, I just find it blind.
Well, I think some Christians feel like, oh, the media hates us and the media is always trying to attack us. And I get that. I do understand that feeling. I relate to that. But our biggest concern as Christians needs to be pointing people towards Jesus and living as Jesus taught us to live, which is to care about vulnerable people and to hate the abuse of other people.
Absolutely.
And I mean, he said that he thinks the media is obsessed with sex, and I quite often think that that's true to an extent, but I don't think that that's the reason.
I don't think sex is applied when it comes. It's not an obsession with sex when we're talking about rape victims, right? That's a different thing. That's not sex. That's abuse, right?
Exactly. dramas and soaps are always put execs on screen.
Yeah,
because
that's
it sells.
different. Yeah.
But there's a different thing whereby I think that a lot of people obsess over the sexual abuse of young people, and that becomes a big story in the media. And it's a big story in the media because it is so abhorrent, and it's so weird. Most of us are thinking, why would anyone ever want to do that? And so that's why the media goes on and on about it, because it's so awful and so insane.
And also, often the only voice that the victims have is the media. If you look at the Epstein victims, the number in the hundreds, if not thousands, the only voice they've ever had has been through media. So, sometimes we're the only voice, and that is important.
It's very odd that he mentioned Muslim rape gangs and said no one's been talking about that. He's obviously not tuned into this station very much.
No, exactly. That's all people talk about, right? And and also, it's like, well, they're both wrong. Right? Yeah. It doesn't. A Muslim rape gang is as wrong as a Catholic rape gang. I mean, they're as wrong as each other. But it's just an extraordinary situation when again Chris was saying that we should show more deference. I think what he meant was we should show more deference to the royal family.
Well, I don't see why.
I don't either.
I don't want to sound like I'm criticising Chris too much, and I completely agree with him about Jesus, who offers all of us salvation, and I'm really grateful for him mentioning that. But another thing that's in the Bible is that God doesn't actually like the idea of monarchy. People overlook this because obviously we've had this link between our monarchy and our state church for a long time. But in the Old Testament, when the people decide that they want to have a king, God tells them that's a really bad idea. And he says, he doesn't think they should have a king.
Because he thinks he should be the only king.
Well, it's partly that, but he also says, if you have a king, they're going to end up being a disaster. And lo and behold, lots of monarchs have ended up being disastrous. As it's often said, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And when you put a person in a position where they think that they've got an intrinsic divine right to be superior over the rest of the population, it can lead to things like Andrew's behaviour.
I think you're absolutely right on that point. I think that is what has led to Andrew's behaviour, is that he just felt that that arrogance and that entitlement that was born with his birthright, if you like. But the monarchy, how badly do you think the monarchy has been tainted by Andrew, and I think will continue to be for some time?
It's hard to gauge because I've not looked at polling on it very recently, but I think it does speak to the entitlement that is intrinsic to the monarchy. So whilst I think that lots of people are not going to directly hold Charles and others responsible for what Andrew has done, and we're all, Chris was saying how we shouldn't be looking at the sin in other people's, that there's Jesus' words about take the plank out of your own eye before you point out the speck in other people's. And I do think that all of us as human beings need to think about our own mistakes as well as criticising other people's mistakes. I think that's very true. But I think that...
But there's a difference between mistake and some of the things that have been going on in this world, right?
Well, yeah.
It's not a mistake for a Catholic priest to rape a child. It's not a mistake to be close mates with a convicted paedophile. That's not a mistake.
All of us have done things that are deliberately wrong to a lesser extent than that degree of evil. But I think that what Andrew has done is demonstrative of the idea of thinking, well, we are born into a situation of having power over other people so we can do what we like. And though, like I say, Charles and William and what have you have never done anything like this, so we're not holding them responsible.
I can't think that they do behave like that, though.
Well, I just think it could remind the public, again, that it's a bit of a weird setup. The idea that some people are above other people is a bit of a weird setup.
But they're not really... They're not really above us, are they? They're more puppet regime, really. They're not.
Well,
they're not. I mean, Andrew is subject to the same laws as you and I. I mean, so they're not really above us, are they? I mean, none of us think of ourselves as subjects. of
Well, I
the
don't
royals
know.
anymore.
I think Chris might have demonstrated that some people do think like that.
Yeah, but Chris also had some very strange thoughts about other things as well. But I don't see them as, in days of yore, going back, yes, they were above us. They had more riches, they had more properties, they probably still do, than most of us. But I don't think we see them as being that elevated from where we stand. At least I don't.
Well, I think that people's views across the population vary, but I think that people are increasingly feeling a bit annoyed by the injustice of it. I think that younger people feel less deference than prior generations, and there's more and more that's coming out. There was something recently about how much of the monarchy's wealth was accrued via enslavement in previous centuries, and obviously our current royal family did not carry that out, but they have inherited some of that money from enslaving people around the world. I do think that we, as people living in the West, should think about how we've benefited from that, though we didn't deliberately do that. We should think about the fact that those injustices mean that there are still people who, in our world, who are suffering, who we ought to have concern about. But I think that people don't like the idea that this family have massive houses and various privilege by virtue of birth. And so whilst most people aren't necessarily hating them and wanting rid of them in an unpleasant way, I think that people increasingly just think, well, why should we kind of doff our caps and give respect to these people just
I
because...
think I know what you're saying, and I think it's changing, but a lot of people have benefits of birth. Some people are born
we all do.
Incredibly beautiful, and they have pretty privilege their whole lives. A lot of people, due to the way they're born or where they're born, have enormous privileges, as we do in this country compared with many others.
We're all born into far better living circumstances than much of humanity.
Yep.
Many people on this planet will not have the standards of living opportunities that we do just because we're in Britain. So we are fortunate. We should keep that in mind. But I think that people don't like injustice, and I think that whilst maybe it's also partly, I've not thought about this much, but maybe it's also partly that in prior generations, the royal family were people that one had to gossip about or what have you. Now we've got enough celebrities, so maybe there's just not that need in the way that
I can't argue with that, Grace. I think that was the thing, wasn't it? They were the pinnacle of society. They were the top. And now you've got a lot of, billionaires and millionaires and all these people whose money supersedes the royal families, and they are becoming less and less relevant, actually, as they stand. I think that there could be a tipping point coming for the royals. I just don't know where that is, but I do think things will change. Grace, always an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much indeed. Just want to read a few messages, quite a lot coming in. Heather said, it's not the case of being obsessed about victims. We are the only voice for the victims because the victims don't have the voice. We are speaking out for them. Thank you, Heather. That's exactly how I feel as well. This is Tristan. Hello, Tristan. Chris from Guernsey claims the media hounded Diana to death. She used the media for her purposes a lot. Use the media, they will use you. The press just did their job. As for Sarah Ferguson, I hope she's not expecting to make money now she's back. She would sell her soul for cash. Nobody else in their right mind would stay friends with a sex offender. And thank you for the comment as well about the call. David just saying, can I have a pint of what Chris has been drinking? I think he was very earnest and just trying to support the king. But I mean, I hadn't said anything negative about the king. I've got nothing. I don't care either way. I've got nothing to say negative. He seems like a nice chap. What can I say? I'm going to take a quick break, but I'll be back in a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning. This is Talk and it's Petrie here with you until the top of the hour. A couple more messages that I want to read out. Andrew has made his bed. Now he has to handle the consequences, something I don't think he has ever done. That's a very good point. So long as the king stands by the police questioning him, I think they'll survive. However, I do question why it's only the British names that are being put through the ringer. That and the Democrat names, yeah. I can't think why that would be the case. Can't think, Sam. Right, God, yeah, there's actually a lot of comments about Chris. I don't want to be banging on to Chris, but thank you very much for all your messages. They're very funny and they're very supportive, so thank you. Right, let's go to your calls now. And Lynn is in Cornwall. I love Cornwall. I'm half Cornish, Lynn.
Bless you, Petrie.
Right, so what do we think of this?
I personally think it's a total distraction with everything else that's going on, and it's a bit convenient that all this stuff going on with Prince Andrew as it was. But I don't know. I'm thinking comments of my opinions, basically.
So you think that what's happening with Prince Andrew is distracting us from something bigger?
Yes, definitely.
And what do you think the something bigger might be?
Generally, how can I put this politely? Islamic takeover and all that sort of stuff.
Right. But do you not think that it's important that we question the Epstein files, potentially the biggest sex trafficking and abuse ring this world has ever seen?
100%, yes.
And important that we examine any part that any royal might have had in that?
Yes, definitely. Definitely, yeah.
Oh, who's that?
Oh, it's my little blind boy.
Oh.
Little dog.
Oh,
yeah.
What's he called?
Clarky.
Barky.
Clarky.
I wonder why. Oh, bless him. Have you got him? I saw a blind dog in the park the other day and he was wearing a collar with, you know, those plastic zip ties?
Yes.
Yeah. And they were sort of on the collar, sticking out like spikes. And I said to the owner, I said, "Oh, what's that for?" And she said, "Oh, so he can feel when he's getting close to something."
Oh yeah, bless. No, I'm totally isolated here. I've got a bit of land, and my dogs are always like on the land. I don't take them anywhere.
Oh, bless them. How many have you got?
3.
3. I've got 2. Don't know how you cope with 3. Yeah, Lynn, I don't doubt that you're right, that there are a lot of things that we could be talking about, but I do think that this is an important one, and I don't want the Epstein files to be forgotten. I don't want the victims to be forgotten, and I think whatever keeps that up front and central is a good thing. But I do agree there are other big things going on. But I think we talk about those as well, don't we?
For sure, yes, we do.
Do you support the royals?
I always did, until, bless her, Her Majesty.
A lot of people think that.
Passed on. And I do think King Charles is in a very delicate situation.
Yeah, I do too. I certainly wouldn't want to be in his shoes right now.
No.
And I think there is a question mark over what form of monarchy we have going. Friendships, yeah.
With what's gone on, yes.
And what about Fergie? Would you welcome her back into public life?
Certainly not. I saw her in the first instant when she first appeared, and I thought, oh,
trouble.
Yeah, basically, if I'm allowed to say that.
Yeah, no, I think we all did. But it's interesting, isn't it, that these people just seem to be so out of touch that she could think that she would be welcomed back into public life.
Yes, absolutely. And it is insulting, really, isn't it?
It is. I think it is as well. Give Barky a kiss from me, won't you?
Yep.
All right. All right, Lynn. It's lovely to talk to you. Please call again.
Taking time. Thank you.
All right. Look after yourself. Bye-bye now. Pete in Southend has said, because I mentioned earlier that Fergie took the girls to visit Epstein 5 days after he got out of prison. And Pete in Southend said the York girls were 20 and 18 when Epstein came out of jail. However, more disturbing are allegations, unsubstantiated yet, that bodies have been buried. I know. Those are terrifying allegations. I mean, honestly, the Epstein files are more depraved and more disgusting and more terrifying than anything your sickest mind could ever think of. But, Pete, even though they were 20 and 18, I still wouldn't be taking my kids to meet a paedophile for lunch. I still wouldn't, especially girls. Especially girls. Because it wasn't just underage girls that were abused by Epstein. There are many girls that have come forward that said that they were in about that age range. And that, I just can't get my head around why you'd want them to sit down for lunch with a paedophile, sex offender. Wrong one. Tony's in Lancashire. Hello, Tony. Last call goes to you, I think.
Morning, Petrie. How are you?
Morning. I'm good. How are you?
Not too bad. Thanks for taking my call, by the way.
Of course. So what do you think could save the monarchy now?
I reckon, to try and finish on a lighter note, I reckon William and Kate, as soon as William and Kate becomes king and queen, I've seen a few interviews with him, actually, on TV and stuff, and he does say he's going to bring reform into monarch.
Yeah, I think he would. I think that you know, they'll get rid of their sort of, I would say hangers-on, but
I watched a few YouTube videos, what's been keeping an eye on him as well. Like, and he's trying to, while that's going on, he's trying to do his job, and yet he's going to making him look bad. I think he's very disgusting, really, if you know what I mean.
The Andrew stuff?
Yeah.
Well, whatever it is, it has caused the king to strip his brother of his titles, right? So he felt it was bad enough stink on the House of Windsor that he wanted to disassociate.
Because at the end of the day, they're bringing shame to the monarch. They should be jailed.
Well, the law will figure out if they've done anything wrong.
Good luck to them. But the number one question, what you mentioned, a couple of hours ago, Trump. Why are they not going for Trump or anybody else?
It's bizarre, isn't it?
It is.
It's so bizarre. I mean, I think we know why they're not. You know, I think it's fairly obvious.
It's like another thing I've been hearing as well.
Careful.
I believe Keir Starmer is on that bloody list, you know?
I haven't heard that. I haven't heard that. I haven't heard that.
A couple of times.
Well, I mean, and also being on the list doesn't mean you're guilty of anything, right? I mean, you know, there are lots of people probably on that list and they were just hangers-on or party-goers or whatever. But anybody who was around Epstein for any substantial amount of time, I think, should be answering questions as to what they knew at the time, what they kind of guessed was going on or thought was going on. I mean, Mandelson said that he didn't, when he was on the Epstein Island, the reason he didn't know what was going on is because he was a gay man. So he wasn't, you know, invited to the parties. But
once again,
but you might get a sense of something.
Yeah. Why
wasn't he invited to? I'd be going, well, why haven't I been invited to the parties? You know, what's wrong with me, right? So there's questions undoubtedly to answer.
He should be asking Trump and getting it out to Keir Starmer, because I think his name's on it as well.
Well,
But
like
anyway,
I said, even if it is, it doesn't mean he's done anything. It doesn't mean he's even met him. It could be an email that was sent about him. I don't know. I've not seen anything about it. You know, you could be right, but just being on the list.
I could be wrong going and saying, but we know Trump's there.
We know that Trump's mentioned in it. He's mentioned more often than Harry Potter in the Harry Potter books.
He should be bloody questioned. In fact, I think he should be made to go, actually.
I do too. I think he should be made to sit in front of Congress and
should,
answer questions. But of course he won't, because he's the sitting president.
And then maybe somehow somewhere on the lines like that he should bring Trump in if he knows something about Trump, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think that, look, Trump and Epstein were friends for a long time. They were best mates.
They must know. They must know.
Well, it doesn't mean you necessarily do know, but you'd have a good inkling, wouldn't you? I mean, I keep coming back to the Jimmy Savile thing. People must have known more than they let on. People within the BBC, and I know they did, they had their suspicions or whatever, but he was such a big star and he was protected by the police that nobody came forward. And those poor victims who tried to come forward for years and years and years weren't listened to, weren't paid attention to. The police just wrote them off.
How disgusting
it is. It really is disgusting. And we're still denying victims their voice.
You know, I'm hoping anyway, as soon as William and Kate becomes king, I'm sure they'll do something then, I reckon.